Kia ora and good morning, councillors, to our last council meeting for this year. It was a tough year, and as I reflected this morning before coming to work, I think everyone in this building are quite happy to say Haere-ra 2023 and May 2024 be kind to us. So I'll open with Karakia for us. Father God, thank you for bringing us together here today to work on behalf of our community. Thank you for the beautiful sunshine out there. Thank you for the privilege we have that we can talk to our community, bring their thoughts to this table, and try and find the best outcomes for everyone in our region. Father, it's been a tough year here in Tairāwhiti. Thank you for guiding us and walking alongside us. And I ask your blessing across our beautiful, beautiful region and country for 2024, so that whatever we do, wherever we go, we always think what is best for us, what is best for our people, and what is best for our nature and our taiho. I ask it in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So I have an apology from Councillor Ani Pakuruhuriwai. Thank you. If you want me to acknowledge you, you better do what Councillor Tupara did. Otherwise, I'll be like, just, hey, you. Moved by Councillor Wharekinga, seconded by Councillor Robinson. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Okay, I do want to welcome Rochelle and Dinny to our meeting. We're just going to run through a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get to you probably in about 5 to 10 minutes time. So thank you for joining our meeting today, and they'll be making a public deputation a little bit later. So councillors, declarations of interest. Nothing, thank you for that. Let's go to page 4. So we have 2 sets of minutes. One is page 4 and one is page 8. Everyone has had the opportunity to read this because Annie sent them out early. Councillor Foster, do you have a contribution to make?
A contribution, yes. On page 5, number 4, it's about agrees to the total rates revenue, and it says about notes rate increases will be above the 5.5% cap, but then in brackets it's got forecast to be 6.3, and I question whether that should actually be there. And the same on page 6 about the debt. I question whether that in brackets actually needs to be there because
that was in our 10-year plan though, because we're still in our 10-year plan till June next year, 2024. So what that is saying, that is what is part of our plan till we then start our recovery plan 2024, June 2024. So I think that's just a statement of fact.
Yep, that's correct. That was in the long-term plan, so we're just stating that what was there will be higher, and that's what was.
okay. I soon as I saw that, I just.
All good. Anyone else? I'm going to take both sets of minutes. Do I have a mover for the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Paraka. Thank you, Councillor Foster. You're happy to move both sets? All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. I take you to our action sheet, which everything is done. Annie will get those minutes onto our docs on tap. Otherwise, there's no activity here that's not been completed. So thank you for that. No leaves of absence. Any acknowledgement or tributes, people that have passed that we should be aware of? Someone that passed.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I had the unfortunate, I went to Norm Payne's funeral on Monday, and it was very well attended, as you'd expect, and some beautiful tributes made to a beautiful man who's done so much for Gisborne, and I'd just like to say cheers to Norm.
Oh, cheers to Norm. Oh, thank you for that, Councillor Alder. He has indeed touched many lives. Okay, Dinny and Rochelle, now is the time that we're going to move over, and good morning. Thank you for joining us. It's lovely to see your friendly faces. I'm just quickly going to outline to you how public deputations usually go. So what we are going to ask you to do is share with us your concerns or thoughts or ideas, maybe around 5 to 8 minutes. And then if councillors have questions, then it gives us that extra time, just the last few minutes that they can ask questions. This is not something which we will debate. We are just here today with our ears switched on to hear what you have to say to us. So kia ora and welcome.
Kia ora koutou, can you hear me?
I might turn it up a little bit. Thank you, Heather. On our side.
Oh, ka pai. Kia ora koutou katoa, tēnei te mahi ana ki a koutou, tēnā koe I te rangatira mo te kaunihera me ngā kaunihera hoki. Ko wai māua, ko Dini Moehu tōku ingoa, ko Rochelle McIntosh ana, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora whānau. On behalf of everyone here in Te Tai Hauauru, we are sending all our aroha your way and amongst all the difficulties and the challenges that you've all been here. We're going to get straight to the point, whānau. I myself, and the purpose of both Rochelle and I to speak to you today is really the opportunity of the potential development that Council can have to develop an Urupa grant policy. What I will do is move towards and ask Rochelle to speak first, and then I will speak second, and then hopefully we'll have some time to answer any questions from you, the kaunihera. So over to you, Rochelle.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to speak to you today. Ko waio, ko Rochelle McIntosh taku ingoa. So I have whakapapa to connections to Te Aotearoa, Tikitiki and Waiawa Matatini. I was born in Gisborne. I completed my schooling there, and my parents still live in Gisborne and my extended whānau, and I often come back to visit Gisborne and my whānau from Wellington. I'm here to represent my whānau regarding their needs and aspirations about caring for their urupa, and my whānau have given me the blessing to present here today. So I just want to start off with a little bit of a story. The idea of establishing a urupa policy and funding emerged last year when I visited my koro and kuia's grave at Puputa Hill Urupa behind Paraurangi Marae. This urupa is located on a hill which is quite steep, has a steep dirt path that can be slippery even when dry and inaccessible when it's wet. I struggled to find my koro's grave because of the state of disrepair. My koro's name is Suape Ranganata, and this urupa has many Ngāti Porou rangatira, for example, Rōpata Wahowaho and Paratene Ngata, so it should be accessible and also in a presentable state. I spoke to my whānau regarding this urupa and also another urupa in Te Aotearoa called Pukuiho, and these were some of the issues they encountered. So we were trying to establish or fix up fences, painting the entrance, improving stairway access and upkeeping the grounds. So they wanted to look after their urupa but needed appropriate equipment and resources to do so. So we think it's really important to start preparing for the impacts as well for climate change, as this will threaten our urupa, and it's predicted that climate change will worsen over time. So for our whānau, our urupas are of traditional, spiritual and cultural significant sites, and they're a tonga for us, and we have the responsibility to look after them. I think that the Gisborne District Council can have a role in supporting whānau and tangata whenua to look after and care for our urupa, like a policy and funding. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity to assist whānau to achieve their needs and aspirations. And I can see the New Plymouth District Council was an example of the council supporting their whānau. So I think, why can't the Gisborne District Council do the same? So before I hand you back to Dini, big mihi to you, e hoa, for supporting this kaupapa. Kia ora, back to you, Dini.
Kia ora, thank you, Rochelle. And again, thank you, whānau, for taking the time. It's a great privilege to speak to you all. We do want to acknowledge one of your staff members who have been very supportive in this space as well. So to your staff member, Heather, thank you for allowing us and supporting us with this process. Ko waio, he uri, he mokopuna o Te Rangi, he uri o Ngāti Parau, he uri o Ngāti Patuwhare Te Hapu. He mokopono hori I Haia Marino, rawa ko Te Rongowae Rona Tohereri, ko Wikitoria Marino Tōku Māma, ko Dini Moeahu Ahau. What we have got here is a wonderful opportunity to advocate and champion for council to develop a urupā policy to help awhi whānau. I see this as a first stage, more like an entree of a three-course meal for you all. We have been provided some information where we could potentially speak to the Sustainable Tairawhiti Committee on the 25th of January, and then perhaps even more so, make a submission to the hearing held in May 2024. The beautiful thing about the development of an urupā grant policy is the potential to further enhance the mana of whānau, to further enhance the relationship between council, hapu and iwi, but more importantly, to provide a mechanism to whānau who have, for a long-standing period of time, have been able to get that support, who have done personal investments to their urupā for the wider benefit of the community. And I think it's an amazing idea. So both Rochelle and I, we were summoned by our whānau over into Tairawhiti to be here today. Some will call it voluntold. But what we wanted to do is provide that opportunity to speak and also say that there is a way forward for councils to connect, to enhance and to collaborate and to support whānau who are wanting to look after their loved ones who have passed. Again, we have a 1,600-page PowerPoint presentation that we look forward to sharing that with you all, and we'll put that down into 3 slides. So we just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity, and we'd like to open it up for any part-time now moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Danny. Thank you, Rochelle. And we look forward to the 1,300-page condensed onto 3 slides. Good luck to you. But hey, any questions from councillors for clarification or questions that you have? Councillor Parata, thank you.
Tēnā korua mō korua kōrero, e pāna ki o tātou urupa I tēnei rohe. I feel very strongly about my responsibilities to urupa as uri, and that my tipuna are buried across Te Tairawhiti and various urupa. So thank you for bringing this kaupapa to the table. I just wanted to get an understanding from your perspective if the policy is looking at like capital upgrades. Are you talking about grants around fencing, or are you talking about council taking responsibility for the maintenance of urupa? I'm just not sure what exactly is the scope.
Ka pai. So the process through any grant application, there is a criteria that whānau have to meet. But this is particularly not just regarding to fencing. It's actually regarding to actually, it could be cleaning of the urupa. It could be something as simple as mowing of the lawns or removal of unnecessary weeds. It could be the fact that you could have the building of not just fences, but also a resting area for our koe and kaumātua who are there to see loved ones. So in terms of the development of a policy, you can put together a specific criteria, and then that's what whānau have to meet to ensure that they are spending the pūtea appropriately will come under that criteria, and then as part of the outcome is to provide photographic evidence of the before and after, and so the councils can see where that investment has gone. So it's the whole wide range that whānau actually do already, but their investment is at a personal, long-standing investment. And speaking from a personal point of view, we've been the kaitiaki of our urupa for over 30 years, and it's been so great to have council's support to allow us to enhance the mana of that urupa.
I just have a supplementary question. Thank you for that. I'm specifically thinking about the whenua I'm aware of and the urupa that I know of, particularly Ngāti which is northeast of Karakia. Lots of that whenua that whenua belongs to hapu. It belongs to it's all on whenua Māori. Are there any risks associated with council participating in the maintenance upgrades of those particular whenua when the whenua itself belongs to whānau? I'm just trying to understand, like, are there any risks, or have we thought about whether or not actually council has a role to play in those spaces? I'm not saying no, I'm just wondering whether or not the policy has thought more about that.
Ka pai. So if the policy is to help, if the policy is to support whānau, so they can actually do the mahi, then that's what it should be. In terms of them participating, it's about further enabling whānau to actually help support the urupa, whether it be the development of or the improvements of the urupa. So I don't see there being any risks if council's role is to enable, but if they want to actually physically participate in it, then that's a conversation that they would have with either local hapu or whānau.
Thank you.
Great. Any more questions or queries? If not, hi Danny and Rochelle, thank you so much for making yourselves available to catch up with us. Thank you also for your flexibility when you tried to find a spot with Heather, and she will keep us updated on the 1,300 page document. But I want to take this opportunity to say Mere Kirihimete to both of you. I hope you have a beautiful Christmas and that you do have some time down, that you can recharge your batteries for a lovely 2024.
Kia ora. Thank you, whānau. Really appreciate it.
Kia ora.
Ka kite.
Ka kite. Okay, councillors. What we are going to do next is go in extraordinary business. So I just want to pass a motion that this late paper becomes part of our agenda. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wharehinga. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Thank you. Next we go, is this late item on the agenda later, Heather?
The other one.
No, the three, it is. Thank you. Kapai. Now I am no notice of motion. So councillors, you would have noted in our agenda that there are two adjourned papers. So that is page 16 and page 15. So those are papers that were left on the table or more information needed. So what we will do is just note those papers, because you would have noticed there are updated papers later in our agenda, which we will then discuss these issues. So at this stage, we just note those two adjourned papers. Do I have a thank you, Councillor Parata? Seconder, Councillor Foster. All in favour? No. Carried. Thank you for that.
Just for clarity, these papers have both got recommendations to them, and usually we've got to make a decision on recommendation. Does that mean
We just
the
received
recommendations are carried over? Or?
We just received the paper and it's superseded by the next paper. Yep. Correct, Heather? Thank you. Okay, next we move past this, so you will see our next paper, and I'll give you time to get there, is our community recommendations to, our committee recommendations to council. So I'll take you to page 26. So you will see that there are recommendations from the Audit and Risk Committee here to council. Do I have a mover for those? Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Thank you, Councillor Wharehinga. All in favour? Contrary. Okay, councillors, this is our 3-year 2024, so it's page 28. 3-year plan strategic framework. And Nadine, can I pass over to you? And then we'll take it from there. So it is page 28, councillors, and I'll hand over to our CEO. Thank you.
That's for the next paper.
Good. Paper, yeah.
Alrighty, so what you have, Morena Tātou, through your worship, what you have in front of you is the result of several workshops that you have had in terms of defining what the purpose, mission, vision and priorities will be for this 3-year plan, recovery plan, consultation document and comms that will go out to the community. It's assisted us in terms of focusing and prioritising. I won't go through all the wording here. I'll take that as read. And if there are any kind of last changes that you would like or amendments that you would like at this stage, happy to be guided on that.
So, councillors, I'm going to open the floor. I'm just going to double check that we had an agreement with Councillor Tupara and Councillor Ria to meet and talk about the correct te reo in there. So maybe I'll hand over to Councillor Ria to just update us on that.
Your Worship, morning tātou. So I was able to catch up with Councillor Tibble and have words with Councillor Unitary and also Councillor Paraka, and then engaged in a hui with the support of Jean over some of the concerns we had over the translation of the reo. Our main concern was that although the Māori translations were very specific and explicit to what the English was, how the English was written, in a Māori language context, it didn't mean the same thing. It was structurally incorrect to how our language is used. And so it wasn't about changing, it was about that the Māori translation gave more power to the English words, that the same context and the same feeling that were intended in the English words were depicted just as strongly and just as passionately within the Māori translation. So we worked on those, and there's now a copy in front of you. And at a later time, if you would like a descriptive, we could talk about it later on those specific translations, but I just wanted to note the order change that was under our vision. Previously, it was healthy people, healthy land, healthy water, healthy future. And after the completion of our workshop and identifying that the needs and strategic direction for the council in that in looking ahead was heavily focused on water and the priorities surrounding water due to our what we've been through the last few months, that we've just rearranged the order in terms of priority. Another thing that really made sense was that healthy water come first, because without water there's no land, there's no people, and then healthy land comes second, because there's no people without land, whereas healthy water and healthy land can sustain if there's no people. So there was just a rearrangement made there with healthy water first, healthy land, healthy people and healthy future. So that is the rearranged order of our vision. But there were no changes made, just tried our best to ensure that the te reo really encompassed and grasped the intentions and meanings of the English wording. Kia ora.
So just for councillors, you will note that the paper that was handed out have the updated wording there. So our recommendation on page 29, number C. So this replace the te reo wording in our recommendation. Right. Councillor Tibble and then Councillor Tupara.
Just to help
help in the thinking about it. I'm a language teacher and a second language acquisition, partly one of my expertises. The point that Aubrey brings is that in Māori language is verb-subject order and English language is subject-verb order. So that's what we're actually dealing with here. Kia ora. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tupara, thank you.
Through your worship, yes, I think it's important that when we have significant documents like this that are intended to go particularly out into our community, that we do at a far earlier stage consider these get-togethers. And I've got to apologise, I actually didn't have time to attend the one that I proposed, but we like to hope that it is programmed in the future when we are putting community documents together, so that we have a more deeper input into that, but certainly acknowledge the work that was done in a relatively short time with some significant us to where we are today. But I hope the momentum built by this isn't lost in the future. Certainly, I'd like to also hope that the whole of council involves itself in these wana. This is about communicating to our community, and we all have a part in that communication, whatever the language. And I think it's significant for us to fully understand the intensity of our intent, if we can involve ourselves in the intent of the language that's being used. And I think there's an opportunity there to grow ourselves further as council. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Councillor Parata, thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. I think that considering that all that's happening in our country at the moment, I'm really proud of the Gisborne District Council for its commitment to learning, to incorporating Te Reo Māori in a way that is evolving. So, whanui te mihi to staff and to this council for that. That's big ups, considering the narrative that's around our country at the moment, and it shows great leadership and bravery on our part, so ngā mihi nui. My thing actually is I really am also encouraged to see the language that we now use in this space. I think for our purpose to be healing our region, I think is huge. I think that's new language for council. I think it's brave language, but I think also it's true. And that our region will be able to feel that and connect with us when we use language that means something to them and to us. Lastly, and I don't know, could this please be explained to me that in terms of our strategic priorities, I don't have any edits to that. I think those are great strategic priorities. For me, it's missing whānau. Is there justification for that, or a reason why whānau don't feature there?
Is that why when we replace tangata, when we said we people?
In our strategic priorities, is that because, and I'll accept this as an answer, because the people are already being noted in terms of our vision, so we don't need to say it a second time? Is that right? Goodbye. Then, other than that, I'm happy to move it.
Thank you for that. So, Councillor Parata, what you are moving, just for councillors, number 1, A, B, C, and D are replaced by this, and then where it starts at 4, where, that is just the normal text on page 29 and 30. Any more questions or queries? If not, we have a mover in Councillor Parata, seconder in Councillor Thompson. Thank you for that. All in favour? Aye. 3 carried. Thank you, and thank you for staff working alongside us, because it is going to make a massive combined effort in the next 3 years to live this document. Okay, Nadine, I'm going to hand over to you for your presentation. Councillors, page 50, draft financial strategy for 2024 to 2027.
Thank you, and Pauline organises herself, so we're just going to go through the draft strategy, the financial strategy, the infrastructure strategy, and just touch on the revenue and finance policy. We went away again back to the line items and tried to see what we could push out, remove, or smooth by the way of proposed kind of rates caps. So we'll go through, we'll keep through that.
Just some of the slides you would have already seen. It's a part of a comprehensive story from beginning to end to where we are trying to reach. So I will be going over some of the information that you may have seen. Again, this is just to say with the financial strategy, you've got two mandatory measures that must be included within the financial strategies, and that is to say that the rates increases and the expected debt cap. So, as was mentioned previously, there was a national conference that we attended, and that from an economic speaker, and he mentioned basically the settings that we actually are in at the moment, which was inflation. It was moderating, but it had been significantly high over the last 3 years. But interest rates were still high. And they also identify, which is in that yellow, that falling commodity prices, which is actually going to hurt the provincial areas, which is our ability to do most of our infrastructure costs, etc. Now, this is a slide which I think does tell a little bit of the story. There is always, within the communities, that rates only go up. They do by inflation, but this is two taxes here. This is central government taxes, and the bottom line, which is flatlined, is actually rates, which is a tax on land. And what that's saying is that while you don't see it, the economic growth, central government taxes increases by the growth of the economy, but local government only basically a flat line, and only really increases by the rate of inflation.
Sorry if I may just interrupt on this one. I think it's really important. There are a few important slides relative to the context within which tairāwhiti and our rating bases apply, that when we're having engagements with ministers, just painting that context relative to central government spending, local government spending, then tairāwhiti spend in comparison to that shows quite a compelling case for how we're managing our rates and the need for further support and funding mechanisms.
So again, this is sort of telling the story with regards to the inflation. The red line is where we are at in terms of where we were when we set the long-term plan 2021 to 2031. We were just COVID came through it, and it was unknown what the extent and what the impacts of COVID would have on the whole economy. And the actual economists at that stage, Bill, were actually, they normally would have a straight projection. They didn't, no. They said it could be a low inflations, it could be medium or high, and that the high inflations would be in the councils with high growth, which is like the Hamiltons, Tauranga, Auckland. But in most of the regional areas would probably be low. We took a conservative approach and we said medium rate of inflation within it, but it was still understated. And the difference from where we have and the actual red line where it is about 11.5% under what was projected, especially by the time you got to 2025. So again, you've seen these a number of times, but I think it is important to actually say, and also when we're saying out of the community, what is those benchmarking and what do we consider ourselves against the unitary councils, councils that do both the district and also regional functions. So in this, as you've said before, seen before, but the two biggest ones which we're saying, what are the income from rates, which is obviously Gisborne, Nelson, Tasman, and Marlborough again hasn't quite got their annual report read in there. So the red figures are from the previous year's 2019. And what it shows that the total rates revenue that we receive is the lowest of all our cohorts. But the total assets compared to all of the cohorts is the highest. And in these particular ones with Tasman, included in that is some joint ventures, which is over a couple of hundred mil. And in ours, we have a CCTO, which is about 45 million associated with that. Same as Nelson's got about a CCTO of about the same amount. Marlborough has got about a 75 million investment vehicle associated with it.
Hi Pauline, I just want to check, do you want to finish your presentation and then take questions?
I'm happy to take as we go.
Just be mindful that there might be stuff still coming up, but I'm going to open the floor, just if people, I'm going to allow you to answer the question. I think often what happens is questions are answered later, but please go for that, and then we allow Pauline to finish up, and then we're open for questions.
Pauline, when you were talking about the inflation there, you mentioned 11.5%. Is that cumulative?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's
over how many years? Was it over the 3 years?
Yeah, it's so where we would have been at 25, it should have been 22%, and we were only registering about 9%. So the difference between what we should have been, our figures there in cumulative, is a shortfall of 11.5.
Thank you.
So this one is taking the infrastructure. So whereas before it was all the assets associated with obviously the green bar, just as was noted before, at the 30th of June 2023, we had impaired assets on our roads and some of our water structure. So in 2022, our total assets was 2.8 billion. Normally, if you would not take the increase, you would be sitting just under 3 billion. But what that is saying, at the 30th of June 2023, it is 2.6 billion worth of assets. But when we compare the next greatest of our cohorts, Nelson only has 77%, but also knowing that we're actually understated with what our infrastructure assets are.
Councillor Parata.
I just, I was wondering if you can explain to me, because I don't understand, how come we have, it's not very good, that's 244.
2.6 billion is us.
How come we got so many more assets than other people, like in Nelson, for example, or Marlborough, but their stuff looks better?
Our roading is so big. We've got too many stuff to look after.
Oh, so we have a
bigger area.
We've got a bigger area than them, so even though their stuff looks better, we
Ours
got
is
more of it.
Yep.
And they've got more ratepayers.
And they have more ratepayers in a smaller area, so we have less ratepayers in a bigger area, and even though our stuff is not as good looking, it's worth more. Is that right?
Pretty much, it's the roading asset is our biggest asset. The other compounding factor with that, it only has a short useful life. So the other assets that they may have, which is the reticulated surfaces, they can last 80 years. But so we're recurring in the high cost of that maintenance and the high cost of doing it. That's where it goes out.
I think just for the sake of context, that I think those things are really important when we're making the comparison between what we have in terms of assets in Nelson and Marlborough. I think it's important to have that somewhere, is that it is a comparison, but it's not really a fair comparison. That's all. Thank you so much.
Councillor Tibble, thank you.
Can you just zoom in on what portion of roading and infrastructure, what percentage is that of our total asset?
So it would have been 2 billion of the 2 point, so it's the majority of it.
2 billion.
Yeah.
So that just quantifies further and makes the optics more visible for everybody to understand 2 billion is our roading.
huge roading network, which is not a long-term asset. You constantly need to fix it. Councillor Wharehinga, no one listened to my comments earlier where I said we're not going to ask questions. Go,
Are you able to expand on the value of roads when we're talking about the comparison, and when we value our roading asset? Some of the value metrics are the same as Nelson, right? So land value, etc., etc. Like, are you able to maybe expand on that as well?
Some of them may do it a little bit differently in terms of they might do historical costs, or they're coming through from different parts of it. But by far, when I analysed all of the different things with it, it was still roadings by far. Even when you're talking the assets themselves, as opposed to the land, it was still more than any of the other three. So that is, yeah.
And we, so when we're valuing our road network, how much do we take into account the wear, so the wear and the condition of those roading of asset, say comparably, just to kind of piggyback off Rawinia's question, Councillor Parazza's question around Nelson's stuff looks great, our stuff not so great. So like how much does condition impact on the value?
The valuations is done by Stantec, and they'll say this is your 1900 kilometres. This is your kind of the things.
It's approximately.
That pretty much that's how they would be doing it, as opposed to their condition is higher, smoother, or whatever. Yeah.
Supplementary. Given that our share of roading is 2 billion, do we know in the district what the share of roading asset Waka Kotahi owns in our district? And what is it comparatively?
Don't know that. I'd have to look at
what roads we
highways, but I don't know.
The vast majority is owned by us, and we've just got the State Highway network. So it's State Highway 2 and State Highway 35 are owned by them or maintained by them. Every other single road out of the 1900 kilometres, it is us. So it might be 200 kilometres roughly, or 300 that they have. But the vast majority sits with us.
So I understand that part I've understood for some time. What I haven't understood is the actual value, dollars-wise. We've had quantification in this meeting that our road interest is 2 billion in terms of our asset class. But what I don't understand and want to understand, so that when Waka Kotahi's discussions are here, that even us as councillors and our public listening at the moment, while we say State Highway to State Highway 35, if you know what its value as an asset is to Waka Kotahi, that being a national asset and this being a regional asset, that quantification of those two things make things more material to understand? If I could have that, please, we could have that. Thank you.
Okay, Pauline.
So just on the next one, it's just breaking down the rates revenue with it. Again, you saw on the previous slide the total amounts which we collect from rates, but what is defined also as rates is water metre by metre. That's defined as a rate. We normally just say what are the actual rates is separated from it. We, from our water metre, collect it only on commercial meterers with it. And as you can see, the water metre, we're very, very similar to Marlborough. But Nelson and Tasman obviously have a significant amount more. They probably water metre from the whole district. And again, the other parts is remissions. We have a significant amount of remissions, the others do not. In terms of the average is across all of these, this bottom line is about 82.7. We're 10% under the average of what that's collected.
Pauline, why do we have so many remissions, 2 million, versus everyone else have way less? Because that's quite an outlier.
There's probably a couple of things, but I would suggest there's we have been writing off the remissions with Mary Freehold Land. We are required to do that. The other parts, I think, fundamentally is we have a high regressive tax system, and there is the hardships associated with that, and then what that creates when you have a uniform annual general charge, same charge per property before you start to get going, which is about 800 or 900, means that if we're giving remissions for people having multiple properties, it comes back onto that bottom line. So yes, there's a combination of multiple factors.
Councillor Alder and then
Thank you, Your Worship. With the water rating, and I'm a country borough, so is a city property paying a high standard charge per water? And if so, how much does that help against metering charge?
Those that are reticulated to the water services, they part of the rates that are collected from that, it's 90%. That if you're reticulated and you have that service, you will pay most of your costs from that rate aspect. So basically, you wouldn't see any of those costs. There's only maybe a 10% charge, which he says is a general rate across providing all of our major infrastructure. But part of the income that we may receive from those that are commercial reduces the overall need to actually rate for the full amount of the water services. So that basically rates as a residual cost. So if you've got revenue, what is it that you need to have to actually fund that activity, and that's rate. So is there an answer?
Not really. So a Nelson resident, what set water charge do they pay compared to a Gisborne resident?
I'd have to have a
we'll
look.
look that up. Yeah. Sorry, just a quick comment actually in terms of the numbers that you're seeing. There's but the population sizes of both Nelson, Tasman and Marlborough are relatively similar in sizes, but they have higher household incomes, the nature of the employment opportunities that affordability issues not as big an issue there as they are here. Okay. I don't know what to say. Andy, Councillor Cranston.
Just a quick point, when we're addressing rates, what they are and ever seen is quite often people come in front of us and say, oh, the rates in Nelson are so-and-so, the rates here and there are that. Most of the others have got that charge of the water meters, and people aren't comparing apples with apples because the rates that they're paying are water metering, whereas ours aren't. So just be conscious of that when people do say that their rates are a lot cheaper everywhere else.
Yeah, that was my question. Why is the Nelson and Tasman so high on their water? Because they've got water metering in there.
That's it. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Okay, Pauline. Last question, Councillor Robinson, and then we allow Pauline to finish.
The remissions, does that 2 million include the hardship stuff, which is actually a government subsidy anyway?
No, you're talking, I think you're talking about the rate of rebates. So no, that's just on what we give back.
So, and I remember last year with COVID or the year before, we introduced a more after tolerant system. Is that 2.1 a result of that? That's not normal. We don't normally have 2 million remissions, do we?
We 1.5, we 1.8. I guess with the change in the Mary Freehold land with regards to the remissions must be, if it's uncollectible, has been written off a little bit, but it has always been around about that 1.8. So it's quite high compared to the only other ones that's higher than us as far north.
So, sorry, supplementary, Madam Chair. So is that principally because of the Māori land write-off? And has not there been some legislative change in regard to that?
Oh, we have a lot of statutory, we've got a lot of debt in Mary Freehold land, so there is a lot of work that we've got to do with regards to embedding with that for 5 to 6 years. So yes, it's going to be high for a little period of time.
Yeah. Okay, Pauline, what I'm going to do now is allow you to finish your presentation, so don't even bother putting your hands up because I will just say a firm no. Go, Pauline.
Okay, so this is just, as I mentioned before, some of the other councils have got other investments. Tasman being the highest of a joint venture of 205 million, and that's just the comparatives and the kind of the dividends, what they obviously Tasman is singing in terms of what they have to supplement what they do. Now, again, we did the benchmarks, as I said before. What was saying from a regional council is 21% of revenue costs is usually an employee costs. So I've taken the benchmarks with what were the Unitaries being, us being green, which is underneath that threshold. But as last year was a little bit of an anomaly because we had significant amount of revenue, 210 million. When I take the average past those 3 years, we were still about 16.6. So still underneath the average what's coming from the Unitaries, but still definitely well less than what they're saying from the provincial areas. Now, this is an anomaly. This is why I didn't give it before, because I don't quite understand the stats. Where we had before, and as Nadine had mentioned, our revenue was the lowest. Household revenue was the lowest compared to the other 3 unitary councils. We approximated slowly just below Nelson. What's coming through from the Stats New Zealand is now saying we're that pink line above, we're above kind of the others that are there. Now there's either some anomalies or they've changed what it is, but I'm not really understanding the stats, and we've asked them how did that come through and how were the significant jumps in those particular years. So I'm not understanding this. It's definitely had been, we were definitely the lowest of them. So, which is why I hadn't given those stats. Those stats says, you know, with the second highest. No, and there's no way that we had those increases that they have. And so we've tried to come back to Stats New Zealand, ask how did they get that. Trust Rafting have the same set of data. There's no other differences associated with it. But in terms of the national part of the comparatives for it, it said that we had an average income, household income was 110 in 2022 compared to New Zealand, which was 118. So I'm taking this a little bit with a grain of salt.
Maybe households are bigger.
Do not speak.
It could be, but it still doesn't seem to jumps. It doesn't make sense. Right, so some of this is what's other councils, what's facing there. This was only just recently in the news. And they're predicting that 25% in the next few years that councils, local government are facing. These are other headlines that come through on here. So I'm just going to, this top one was Karakia, who said that they can't keep it low and rate in the face of inflation, and that, especially on the infrastructure, 14 to 20%. That's Karakia, and that was a statutory, until recently, statutory governance. And they have seen in the last couple of years, they've definitely been in that higher rates increases. Here, we received interest rates. It's 48% increase, and when you're looking at the increases that are going through, it's significant the amount of jump that's coming through here. Inflation. The one at the bottom here is the cyclone recovery budget. This is Napier, and Napier is for the current year 23-24 annual plan. They had 9.7 and then an additional 2% for recovery rate, going up to 11.7. While this is Hamilton, it is trying to say that it's nothing new or gold plated, it's basically the costs have gone up for doing business. So I've they did a little bit of these, and I'm just going to, and the top part is these are the forecasts that are coming through from the councils. Tasman, which is just a BAU, perfectly not suffering from any recovery aspects, 10%. Nelson is saying they're 9% for a BAU, plus they are actually having a 7% to pay for their recovery, and that's over 10 years, and they're going to have that as a UADC over that period of time. Regional councils are basically at 30%, but they're trying to target 20. Tauranga, as you can see, was in that previous one was 13.1, and the previous year 13.8%. These cohorts in their current neighbours, I should say, in this current year, as I said before, Napier has gone 11.7. Hastings had to put up 3%, but they're also their debt went up 50 million in that 1 year. We tried to keep our rates within what we said was in the financial strategy, which was to be within that 6.5, even though we said in our earlier papers that we were holding 2% for interest, 2% for depreciation and insurance. And you can just see there are others that are coming through, which, yeah,
Most will be coming through this week, Pauline, as
yeah.
councils all meet for the last meeting before the year end.
So again, as I mentioned before, that inflation, where we saw that the other things, that cumulative inflation, where we had projected to what it is 11.5% under what we had estimated. We know that the proposal voluntary buyout was at 1.1%. We've got rising interest rates, which we had in the LTP, which was at the low of 3.2%. We're now projecting that will be 5.4. Insurance costs, depreciation, and then on top of that, there is recovery. So this is where we were. This is this is where we are, but this is where we're coming from. And what that's saying, what are the costs and things that we actually have? These are the years, and these are the cumulative impacts of these factors. As we saw in the previous one, we're just saying, bare minimum, what are the contracts, what do we got to commit, what's there outside there? And we're saying it's 5.6. Knowing that depreciation and the inflation, if we added those together, was 14 or 15%. Loss of dividends is a significant impact onto our ability to do stuff. Then we have proposal, the interest cost, and then there's the recovery associated with it. So I'm just going to flip over some of the infrastructure strategies to see the costs, and you've got it in another one. But basically the costs that you have got in there, that most of the things within that infrastructure, within the capital expenditure, 95% is 94, is either fossil or related or infrastructure costs. And that of that, 65% of that is roading. And when we've got 3 capital projects that are over that, it's basically the roading, it's the category 2 protection of flood protection that's in there, and then it's the category 3 buyouts. Again, the LTP is over here. The levels that we had for those infrastructure, this is what the new 3-year plan for the same period is saying, which you can see where it is in roading, and this is where the increase is. This is over on the other side is millions. Right, so this is where we're coming to, right? So this is key directions for your estimation. What is it that we actually have to do to get to where we need to be and why we're cleaving from? So, and this is just this is actuals. We said we can smooth some of the things. This is what we're saying as a target. for our BAU to be for the next 3 years, to be within that. But we know there are additional, this is BAU, to separate the actual discussion about what is different and what do we need to do. And we're saying between that years 25 to 27, we would need to have between a 2.5 and 3.5% for identifying with the category 3 buyout, plus the recovery rate, which is woody debris, etc. Now, I'm just going to tell you what this is meaning in the next one slide. So just to give you a little bit more about what that is. So we're saying that that level, because we don't know in all of the things within the recovery what it's going to be looking like and what it may come through. We've got 3 years and we're trying to say what is that cap, what do we need to move within. We know also that the FOSL buyouts, where we assumed early in September, was about, it was under 40 dollars. It was about 35. We're now nearing 60. So the costs are more. So we need to know that there is some degree of flexibility associated with it.
Are we going to go back to the government to get more money for, because that's their proposal, we will have to go back and negotiate. It's not a given, it's a negotiation process.
Thank you. No, that's fine. So within that original one, we said that was 1.1. We're suggesting, like we mentioned before, that there is an opportunity for a new rate, and with regards to it is still an ongoing issue of knowing that the woody debris is in our waterways, that's still coming through, that we need to have some form of ability to address some of that issue as we go through. But we're suggesting that 85% is a targeted rate. And the targeted rate is based on the evidence so far for the last 4 or 5 years since 2018 of what makes up that woody debris, saying 70% is in forestry exotic pines, 15% is about the poplars, and then 15% it is you can't identify. So 15% would be UAGC. And then is saying, okay, if there's an increase in service that we need to do for, we only have drainage, rivers and land drainage at the moment, 670,000, that we increase that. But we would say, if we're going to do that, it would be to the point that it's UAGC, because at this point, you can't identify I'll come back to that one. The estimated cost of this is between $63 and $83 per annum for each of the properties.
For the new rate.
For that new rate, for the new UAGC. However, you will find that some of the forestry pay their share of that woody debris is up to, on average, about 1.3k, and then pastoral, which is 50% of that part, would be an additional $91 on average. But basically, that's trying to give you an indication of the impact with the recovery rate and the things that we're trying to address associated with it. I would suggest that the UAGC that we've got identified for some of these, apart from the proposal, would be for a period of our recovery, 3 years. Thereafter, you would be looking at who has received the most benefit if you're going to have an increased level of service. But for this period, while we're trying to make it good, I would suggest that it should be a UAGC, which is split a little bit over that period of time, and then you review who pays for it after that. The debt, I'm just saying we go straight to our threshold, which we can borrow, which is 175, but trying to, not compromising what we need to do and what we actually have, but we still try to target to be underneath that, to be 160, 75%. But knowing that the threshold, that's your ability that you would have, and acknowledging that, but we try to still target to be below that. So, this is where the question is for yourself, and the overall discussion. With those parameters, should be within those thresholds for the BAU, 7.9, then a new rate recognising that mostly a UAGC, and the majority, 95% of Rāwhiti should be below that target of the BAU because of the low UAGC rate. It would only be in those particular areas which would be slightly over, and there would be with it. So that's the kind of, is that the direction within that, or yes, no, or what else?
Thank you for that, Pauline. So in essence, and we'll open the floor soon, everyone will get you don't have to put your hands up. We will give everyone the opportunity to have their say and to share their thoughts. So what in essence you're saying to us, approximately 8% rate rise in this 3-year plan is needed to do business as usual stuff. Then on top of that, 2.5 to 3.5, so top could be 11.5% rate rise, includes everything else, and the debt level sits, you see, between 160 and 165.
We would, no, the threshold is 175. 175 we'll try and target.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor. I'm going to start with Councillor Wharehinga and come this way, then I don't have to concentrate who puts their hands up first. Everyone can have their say.
Thank you very much.
It's important.
I wanted to ask, how much are you projecting the cost of growth? 7.9 plus 3.5 is 11.4%, but we're saying higher than that on here. So approximately how much is it including growth?
0.5%, that's what the growth has been. And bear in mind, the metric is what is the new, it's on the previous year. And so therefore, if there's new subdivisions or anything like that, it says, okay, that's an addition related to those things, but about 0.5.
So what we're talking about, brass tacks is a 12% increase in rates for this first year, and then the next, so year 2 was 8% plus also this 3.5 plus growth.
The maximum, these are the caps. This is the caps that would be only up until those thresholds, yes.
So we're looking at 12% year on year for the next 3 years. Is that what we're talking about?
That would be the maximum. I would suggest.
That's our threshold.
That's your threshold.
Yeah.
And you have to be below those things that come through with it. Yeah.
Because it's a lot. It's a lot for our community. And thank you for prefacing all of this information with the conversations that are happening everywhere else in terms of with every other council, and also where we rank at in regards to the rate take and things like that, in comparison to other territorial authorities. But it's a lot. If this is the direction that we're taking, and we as a council need to perform, because with this extra money going out, and I'm not saying we don't perform, but with such a big jump, the community expectation will be, all of that engagement in regards to clearing of drains, all of that engagement in regards to removal of woody debris, etc., etc. There'll be an expectation on performance. So, I don't see any other way for us to be able to get to where we need to go. However, I think, just knowing how much under pressure this council has been, and us as councils have been in 2023, this decision right here sets us up for another term of high pressure performance, high pressure conversations from the community to not only the staff in this organisation, but all of us around this table. So it's not a no in regards to this. It's a
We might have to speed up a little bit because we still have quite a few. So
I often think about the legacy that my grandmother and her generation gave to us, and the things that they did, that they started, that we carry. And I think about what legacy I'll leave for the next generation, and what mahi they'll need to carry. And I feel like that's where we are right now. That's where we are right now. I'm not saying that this is not a hard thing to do, that it is. It's a big ask to ask our community to essentially invest in our own region. Things cannot continue the way that they are. We're on a sharp decline. Everyone is on a decline. We cannot let our region continue to decline, because that will be the legacy that we'll leave to my daughter and to your children. We cannot have that. We cannot have that in Te Tai Rāwhiti. And I think that the pressures that we'll experience over the next 3 years will be shared by everybody, but this will be the legacy and the decision. I think that the communication needs to be very clear that the alternative of not doing this is further hardship. That's what it is, right? This is only going to bring us up to a certain point. It doesn't take us to Disney World level of greatness. It takes us to a certain level of not falling behind the rest of the country. And I think that our community needs to understand we're all doing this together. And yes, hold us to account. I did not come to council for an easy ride. And I can appreciate the pressures upon council, those that sit at the table and those that do our operations. I appreciate that. But right now we're in a fight. And in order for us to grow as a region, to get better and to heal, it's my belief that we will participate in that. I don't have a question, but I appreciate the presentation and the information that we get to make decisions like this. Ka mihi nui.
Rob.
Yeah, look, I think we shouldn't be sugarcoating this. This is reality. And if we look at all the other councils around the country of what they're facing, same things. There's two things there that we cannot control. One is inflation and one is interest rates. Now, we've got no control over that. And those are one of the two of the biggest things that are affecting the cost structure and everything else. So, you know, we've got a couple of things there that we can control, or we can try and control, and that's around our dividends. You know, there's a 4% difference there it makes out of not having dividends arrive, and around our recovery. And we're going to be fighting, going to the new government and trying to get more money. That's, you know, but we can't go and say we've got it until we have. So let's not try and sugarcoat this. This is reality, and we've got a big job ahead of us, and it has to be paid for somehow. So.
Thank you, Rob. Larry.
Yeah, I totally agree. We want to have a place that people want to come to, where people and business want to thrive. And this is the harsh reality of what we've had over the last 3 years. We're in a recovery period, so this is what harsh reality is, what we have to do. And we've actually trimmed it down to what it was to get to this level now. We were gasping hugely last week when we had the first reality check of 21%. So to see this now is like what is acceptable, you know, but what is acceptable to our region. This is do this, and at that level, we're going to have to make sure that we get good bang for buck. I'm sure we will. So, I support.
Kia ora. Firstly, I just wanted to point out, because there was one of the slides where it compared us to Napier and Hastings, because they were also affected during the floods. And I really just want to remind, especially our community, that within the area of Napier and Hastings, there are 5 district councils that share the load amongst a region that is relatively not that much bigger in size, but a lot more people that live within that region. So we're taking on the responsibility for one big region, and our neighbours have 5 councils to help carry the burdens that are upon them in relation to the cyclone. So I just wanted to, you know, to keep that in our minds, that comparison, when you compare us to what Napier City Council, who are only responsible for the city, that though those numbers are different, the circumstances are totally different. In saying that, I absolutely agree with the sentiments that have already been talked about, especially with those of Councillor Parata, that it is really dumb decision to have to make, but for the benefit of future generations, and we talk a lot at this table about not kicking the bucket down the road, and then the reality check of the high number that it could possibly be, and then knowing that that high number is only going to get us back to basics. It doesn't include any frills and lights and extra bits and pieces. It brings us back to national par basics, and that's the least that we can work towards for our children to not have to. Don't kick the bucket down the road for someone else to deal with, because it's a hard stink decision for us to have to make. So I just want to put that out. Thank you so much. The amount of work that has gone into the workshops, the presentations, just so that we're really well informed that none of us like this decision, but we all understand in order to get to change the trajectory of the way that our district is heading in terms of our roading, our infrastructure, our CBD, then a drastic change really is needed. So thank you to everyone who has contributed to helping to bring us all the information.
Thank you, Councillor Alder.
Oh, where to start? A reminder that we have had rate rises over the past, where the rate rise has been well ahead of the inflation rate. First point. Second point, it's kind of not coming out obviously here, but probably the single biggest factor in this increase is the cost of our roading. There's a major eye-watering capital cost in the budget going forward over the next 3 years. And am I right, Pauline, that is a major contributor to these payments?
It's some of it. I'm trying to get it down to get to the things, but always roading is a big cost.
These roading figures have been presented to us, I presume, from consultants and whoever's been looking at the state of our roads. And the reason I'm here, one of the reasons I'm here, was because our roads were being so badly maintained before this event. Trying to think of an analogy, and don't get this wrong, press, and forgive me, Fred Lewis, but if Enterprise Cars were servicing cars and not changing the oil, he'd be selling a lot more cars. And I'm just wondering about our roading, because it's been discussed, I've discussed it with lots of people and heard lots of people comment. If you don't look after our roads, you're going to have to replace them. And this is what we're faced with here, is a major capital spend on our roading. And it's now impacting us in our future rate payment. So if we're going to have to take it, we're going to have to take it, but we can't drop road maintenance in favour of future capital We've got to keep looking after those bloody potholes.
Watch your language in these chambers. Thank you very much for your contribution, Councillor Alder. Councillor Tupara.
I must say it's very difficult to find the words to respond to this. But what I can clearly state is to thank our Chief Executive and his staff for the very thorough path that they've taken us down. And over the last 3 or 4 workshops that we had, and just Tuesday gone, made my life very difficult. So I'm most appreciative that you brought that difficulty forward. I'm not a huge numbers person, but thank you for explaining that. That aside, I know 2 families are struggling and will probably have to give up living in a car. And that's the nature of the Tairāwhiti. And it's very difficult to ponder how our community can afford this. I accept Councillor Ria's point on having the bucket down the road. People don't even have a bucket. And any increase is extremely difficult for me to accept. And I'll be plain about that. I take Councillor Alder's report, position on what we do and how we do it. I find it really hard to look in the hallway down the back of the hall here and see that table set for us. It's difficult for me to reconcile some of the things we do against some of the need that we have. And I think I'll always have that. And so this decision is massive for a community with the deprivation that we have, and I made note of the graph on the average income. All they pointed out to me is the richer are getting richer. And but I would like to have seen a graph of what are the low parts of income in our region. I work in part in mental health, and even now families who are so distressed that the word Christmas is appearing in the media. Councillor Wharehinga pointed it out. We have to make a decision which will be the hammer nail, the last blow of the hammer on the nail for many houses, many families. They just can't afford to do it. They can't continue to live in the tairāwhiti, but they have no choice about being able to live. And I think today's a very sad day, but it's good to know that this decision will be shared amongst us all. But I still suffer the inability to find the kupu to take out to our community. But what I can say is that the tohungatanga that's been shown by staff here sets them apart. And it seems to set them apart from other councils that we've received from other councils who have made the same decision. I call the tohungatanga has come from our staff. And that's a kupu that I think I can fairly take back into our community, because tohunga have been a part of bringing a healing. And I think we should discuss this not as a rating, but as a healing and a well-being exercise to the mental capacity of the tairāwhiti to be the tairā. This is the rāwhiti part of who we are as a people, who we are as a culture. And we stand on our coast, and we look out to the sun, and we feel a blessing that we all get to share this. I'm trying to find the kupu. I'm trying to find the cultural concepts that we can stand on titirangi and look out to the horizon with all our deprivation and know this is just a tiny bit that we can do for our mokopuna. Because it's going to be a lot worse for them. But we need to stand as a tairāwhiti, and we need to understand what rāwhiti means as a council and as a community.
Thank you, Councillor Tupura. Councillor Gregory, thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify, looking at that and adding that up to me comes to 13.9%.
So one of the things, it would have been about 11 with regards to it, and that's the maximum. But what we said in the previous one is not going to be that. While it says the percentage increase from the previous year, for people to expect the majority of our 23,000 ratepayers, 22.5 will have under that 7.9, but there will be an extra 63 plus 83 on top of that. So they'll be well less than if you're talking percentage increases.
Okay. Okay. So
not plus 3.5. Sorry, it's not plus. It's the maximum of 3.5 on that second part. It's
I see.
It's 2.5 to 3.5. And the first year we know we've got those all at 1.5. So it's not in addition to. That's one or the other.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, it's a tough thing to be facing as a council, but it's fairly clear what we need to do. I appreciate the kōrero from Rawunia and Albury with regards to this decision being a mokopuna decision, and Councillor Tupara as well. And the only other thing I'm going to say is supporting Rob, looking at the things that we can control, looking at the roads, and there will be some difficult decisions that we will have to make going forward about some roads, and I just hope that we are going to look at ways that we can save money within this decision going forward for the next 3 years.
Thank you, Councillor Gregory. Councillor Cranston, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Reality is biting. I always get frustrated at election time when so many candidates put their campaign around, I will not put the rates up, I will control rates. This is the reality of what we do. And it's actually probably the reality of having that intention to keep rates down. At some stages, people were so solely driven on what they'd said that they were probably kept unrealistically low at that time. And it was always going to come back and bite us at some stage, and this is it. This is the day it's come back to bite us. And we do have to address it. We can't say, well, it'd be great to keep it under 12. Even at 12 or under, we're going to not look too bad with what's happening around the rest of the country. And I think people are reading that and seeing the reality of how councils do have to operate, the constraints they're operating in, and just how much revenue they do need to do business just to keep going. So I've done a quick calculation. As many of you know, I am a landlord. I have low decile families in my rentals, and I really, really look after them. Those properties of mine would cost me an extra $7.25 a week, which a lot of landlords will pass on to their tenants. I won't, but that's the reality of the number. So perhaps when you look at it in those terms, no one wants to see an increase, but that's the sort of the low-end cost to the community. So 12% sounds huge, but perhaps it's not as huge as anticipated and what's felt out there. So we can't go deferring any longer. We've got to get on with it. We've got to do what's expected of us. And if it's 12, around 12, then that's what it is, and that's what we're going to have to accept and get on with. Thank you.
Councillor Tibble.
Tikana, tēnā koutou, ko mātou te mana kaihautu, ia koe hoki te mana whakahaere te kākua moni, Pauline. Thank you very much for the officious way that you've walked us through understanding this very difficult matter. It is the most difficult situation we've had to face in the 12 months, past 12 months now. When you align it with what the country's experienced and our region has experienced over the last 4 years, it just seems to be in line with the air brake of the difficult times that we've been through. And this is the part where we get to affect the result of what that's mean for us, not only as a nation, but also as a region. It's a stink place to be, but it also, in all good conscience, should be the place we expect to be at this time. And our community needs to be reminded that we knew this day was coming as a result of what has happened in our weather event. Does it make it any easier? No. Does it mean that we're all aware, just as Councillor Cranston has shown us, what the effect will mean for those who are renting, and those shifting costs being loaded onto others that may not necessarily be able to bear that. But then again, what we've also seen over the 4 years through our most difficult, trying times since 2020 is that we've seen support come from spaces we've not expected to help us in ways we've never seen that before. So I'm optimistic that where there is great need, there will still be great help that comes. With that, it is a sad day to have to raise our rates, but we also too have to be great stewards to be able to make the right decision on behalf of our entire community, because it is the right decision, and because being governors is a hard thing to be, and this is what we've come to face hard decisions. So to all my colleagues, I'm very proud to stand with you in this moment, to be able to face this difficult decision. And I know that we will do the right thing for our region.
Councillor Robinson.
Thanks. So a couple of times, Pauline, you said the maximum would be 7.9, but the fact is that the majority of people won't experience above that 7.9, but there will be a cohort which will be paying more than that, correct?
Yes.
Right. Second thing is that the BAU rates figure is, the rates comprises about 40% of our overall budget, 32%, 35%?
Normally it's supposed to be 60. Last year was an aberration because we had higher, and so it was around 40%, but normally it is 60.
So what are we anticipating, what have we budgeted it to be as a percentage over the next 3 years?
So effectively you're at 78 million, so you'd just be adding the percentage increase over the previous year as you go out from those.
Sorry, I'll rephrase my question. As a percentage of our overall anticipated budget per year for the next 3 years, what
I'd have to come back because you see what this assumption is based on the Crown funding, they would get 125, so you probably at the same things, I would think it'd be about 48-50% because we've got significant amount of external funds that come through.
Which is the point, my second point I want to make, is that this budget, or this rates increase, is, the reality of this rates increase is wholly contingent and reliant on central government funding for this region continuing on a particular trajectory. And I want to see it in this public forum because the previous government has been extremely supportive of this region, and that for our region and our people of our region, we need that support to continue. Otherwise that rates increase will be twice that, or 3 times that. This rates increase at 7.9 is contingent upon the central government supporting this region to make up the balance of our massive budget to keep, and just to recover, no, not to get ahead, just to BAU. So that's the second point I really want to make in this public forum. The third point I want to clarify is, on Tuesday, we had a slide up which showed quite a large increase in the first year of the next 3 years. And you told us in response to a question about that you're going to have some pain, was your words, in the first year because the cost of not having that pain in the first year actually, in real terms, was increased interest components and da-da-da-da. But this is now smoothed out. So what has changed between Tuesday and today, and what is the real cost of that, please?
So that's the part that we'll have to go through. It is smooth. In the last LTP, we had 6.5 in the first 3 years. We knew in the first, when we were coming at the same period, 2020, that the rates increases of that year 1 and 2 were about 8.5 and 9, but we said we would smooth it out to get to the 6.5. And so this is trying to get to that, but what has also changed is we've recognised the increased recovery rate separate from the BAU. So that's the point of difference that we had before. So when you come through that, you've managed to smooth the other impacts of it.
So are you telling us that, as an evolution of what was said on Tuesday, that in fact there won't be any real significant increase in, for example, an interest component or a borrowings component, which is kicking the can?
We'll be within those bounds. I will have to, and I'll come back in the new year, I have to, from this, in order to get your details behind it, I need to get a kind of a level of what we can actually borrow. And you'll get the details of what do we have to do in order to get there, and that will be the details which we can give you the specific mechanics of it. What did we assume? Where did we get the priorities? What did we have to give up? And what we have. That will come to you in the new year. So you're asking for the details a little bit ahead before we get there.
No, I'm just trying to rectify, Tuesday's corridor with today's. Thank you.
Thank you. Second to last speaker, Councillor Thompson.
Thanks for that, Pauline. Can I just ask a couple questions? Just looking at that slide, there's no specific mention of the GHL dividend. Is that built into the 7.9?
Yes, it has to. We have to manage within what we've got to do, how we're going to do it, and what are the assumptions that we're going to do when we come back to you, and what does that mean? Yeah.
So no, thanks for that. Second question in regards to the fossil buyout. So it's interest free for 10 years, but there's a 1.1% UAGC cost. So I'm presuming we're paying back some of that capital. Is that correct? Or are we
No, so we don't start doing that until after that 10 years. All of that is because when we get more houses, there's more costs and there's demolition costs. Then we actually have to restore the land, and then there's quite a bit associated with it. So that costs are basically the costs of now owning those properties and doing the other things. And as we go a little bit on, the other part of that was also the category 2, where we start to have new flood protection. There'll be depreciation associated with that. So that was the impacts associated with it. Where we projected, because it was a good question by Councillor Farrell, what happens when that interest comes off after the 10 years? When do we start to see it? We saw about another, at that 10 years, an increase for paying that back, about another 1% at that particular point, and then a 0.5. So 10 years later, you will see a spike coming up from having to pay the interest and having to pay the principal payments.
It's about 1.1 hike, is it?
Yeah, that period of time later on at this stage.
Yeah, being last, most of what I was going to say has been said. And yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said. We're all house owners, so we obviously want rates as low as possible. Just touching on Josh's point, we're going to be really under the spotlight with our spending. Yeah, I just want people to realise there's different buckets of money, and all our spending, a lot of that's actually government funding and not our money we're spending. So it might look we're doing nice to have, or why are you putting our rates up and wasting it on that. I just want people to realise that's not our money. If we don't spend it, we don't get it, and we can't transfer it to where we want it.
Thank you for that. No one's going to speak again. I'm going to speak now, and I'm going to take my time because their time. No, I'm kidding. So what I want to say to councillors, remember what we're doing today. If you can imagine, we're building a framework. We are saying this is the the top of our thresholds, and now staff can go away because they now have that guidance from us to come back with the detailed information which we will receive, which shows you a $200,000 house in Mangapapa, this is what it would mean for that. If you own a $3 million horticulture block, this is what it will mean to you. If you live out in Matoki Valley, this is what it means to you. And they always bring examples, usually 3, a low, medium, and high value property, so that we can see what happens and how it affects our people. I am very proud of what you have presented to us today, and I want to thank you because I have barely slept since last week when we started talking about where our rates are going and what we need to do. I'm proud today. This is reality, what Councillor Telfer said. This is reality, and I want to give those of you that weren't here a quick history. Between 2015 and 2018, there was a 2% rate rise. It doesn't matter what were done or not done, rates were not going to go over 2%. We are now paying for that. But then, after that, 2018, that's when we started seeing more extreme weather events. What happens when you have an extreme weather event and suddenly a road or a bridge is gone? Nadine and Pauline need to scramble to get money from somewhere, which sometimes is preventative maintenance, that you have to then take that money and do some work to connect the communities again. You cannot rate for those events. You cannot say we're going to take $15 million a year in order for us to be prepped. That's not how it works. So our staff have been, since 2018, also spent a lot of extra money that events were caused that they have no idea where it's going to happen. So also a lot in that space have happened where they just have to get money to do stuff in order to connect our community again. So I want to thank you for the work you have done. We as councillors, like Councillor Tibble said, I'm here because I want to make sure when I leave, my kids and my grandkids have infrastructure that's a little bit better than when I was this placeholder. So for me, it's tough decisions, but we need to be brave and we need to look at the future. I'm glad that we've got a relatively short window because it will keep us focused. Our job around the table is to set the direction, which we are doing today, and then keep our staff, give them the vision, the putia to do that, and then the accountability at the end of that. So I want to thank you, Pauline. I know you were sick as well in the middle of all of this, working 20 hours a day to bring us through all those workshops and then to get here today. So I want to say, councillors, we will have a lot more discussion around this. This is not discussion yet. All I wanted from you today and what this paper does is give us that overarching framework. We are going to have several more meetings in the new year where we will talk about where the incidence of rates fall, when it is strike, who does it affect, where we want to see that going. So there will be a lot of input still from every single councillor towards that discussion. So I want to thank councillors today as well for your honesty. I want to thank you for your future-focused vision. I want to acknowledge what Councillor Parata and Councillor Rio said. I've got a saying, everyone wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die. So we all want good infrastructure and we all want a great place for our kids, but there are sacrifices to make in order to get there. And that is what we are doing today. We're acknowledging the fact that it's tough. We acknowledge the fact that I don't really want to make a decision like that. If I could say, oh, 2% rate rise is ka pai. But in order for us to get where we want to be and our kids to be, we need to be brave today. So I thank everyone for their contribution. I have got some wording which is very similar to that, which I'm now going to read to you. And then we set that direction and there will be a lot more that we will discuss going forward. Ka pai? So the wording is very similar. You go to page 51 and there is a number 1, but then I'm going to add a number 2 which says confirms the direction is A, rate rises to be within the threshold of 7.9 excluding growth, plus 2.5 to 3.5 for the new rates, and then a debt threshold of 175% of income. Ka pai? I'm very happy to move this, to take our community forward, to help with the healing, and hopefully after 3 years when we look back, we will be able to say what we decided on today makes our community and our children proud. Seconded by Councillor Tibble. All in favour? Aye. Carried. Hi, staff. So if I can get everyone to come back. Okay. Miss Joanna Noble.
Mena tātou, bit of change in direction, but thinking towards the future. Bringing you a report and an update of our water security resilience program. We've had an update for a while. Before I start, I did want to make a couple of acknowledgements. So while my name is on the report as preparing it, actually we had the support of Director Amanda Langney, who's been working with us closely on this program and has also been doing some similar work in the Hawke's Bay, so we get to learn from their experiences as well. And I did just want to acknowledge the passing of Keith Katapa from Te Whana Akai. He's been a stalwart advocate for management of water, improving water quality and quantity throughout Tarawhiti, particularly on the Petitions flats. And he was a member of our freshwater advisory group both this time round and last time round too. So, thank you. So I acknowledge this was quite a meaty report, particularly the update on our regional water assessment. So we last had this work done sort of about 10 years ago, so it was definitely timely to update it. It was looking at where water is currently taken from within the region, and looking to the future in terms of increasing population, climate change, and potentially changing water demand from users. And the picture shows that demand is increasing, and with climate change, supply is reducing, so the amount of water available. As you probably are well aware, we are already allocated or over-allocated in many of the water sources on the Poverty Bay Flats, where most of our consented water takes currently are in the Poverty Bay Flats area. So really the question we are coming to you now with is where to next in terms of water security, and where you would like staff to focus their efforts. So our business as usual is really the demand management. That's our statutory responsibility in terms of freshwater planning, demand management, whether that be allocation limits and targets that we set through our freshwater plan, and also the work that our municipal supply team do in terms of managing demand. So that's sort of our business as usual. And I think regardless of what direction we get today, there will be increased focus in that area. We're seeing that very strongly through the freshwater planning discussions that are happening at the moment. We could do more. We could do something differently in terms of supply. So that's really the question is, do you as a council want to explore what that looks like? And there are a couple of options there. Option 2 is to provide more of an enabling framework for others to pick up and progress water supply options. So that could be a managed aquifer recharge scheme, some kind of community irrigation scheme. So here we're talking about supply not for municipal use, but for non-municipal use, so irrigation being a biggie in our region. And then the third option is the more extreme option is, does this council want staff to investigate what a role could look like in terms of actually providing that water supply infrastructure? So providing some, for example, a dam and a community irrigation system, or providing a managed aquifer recharge scheme. We've done the investigation, but we haven't made that operation. And that's my story.
I'm going to open the floor to councillors. Again, I'm just going to ask you, I know these are very important stuff. If you don't have something to say, great. If you do have something to say, keep it relatively brief and you'll speak once. Councillor Telfer. Telfer, Wharehinga, Foster, Ria, Cranston, Robinson, Thompson. Remember that.
Right, where do I start? This is look, I think this is a really, really important piece, a position for us. We've gone through workshops lately, and we've come up with you know, a consensus around the table that water, drainage, water security, that's our number one priority. And I think this is a golden opportunity. We've been sitting here with this recharge program that's been sitting in the wings now for 8 years or something, or 9 years. I seriously think we need to take this very seriously, because if we're going to climb out of this hole we're in, we need to look at every opportunity we've got to actually increase our economic thrust in this district. And one thing we've got is these Poverty Bay Flats out here. There's a whole lot of people that have got crops on these flats that aren't making very much money. And the reason they've got those crops is because they haven't got access to water. They would do things differently if they had access to water. So I think there's a huge opportunity to increase the capacity that we've got on these flats to actually bring back into this town. And we're not going to do it just by putting our hand out to the government all the time, asking for money. We've got to get out of that mentality. We've got to start doing a bit more for ourselves. So, look, I'm really, really keen to push this. I think there's a golden opportunity here to actually, like is in the South Island, is to create a water body, a water scheme. And it's run by that body. And let's try and move this as fast as we can, because this is going to help us. And there are, a Maori land that haven't got water, that want water. There's farmers out there, there's small farmers that want water, that haven't got water. The only way we can do this is do it as a joint thing where it will benefit everybody. So you can't do it on your own, and I want us to really focus on pushing this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Parehinga Foster.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thanks for the paper, Joe. Really interesting read. I guess I found the difficulty for me was what each of the three would actually mean, and I'm actually interested in all three of them, obviously because they're escalating, they're escalating options. I'm super interested in, aspirationally speaking, option 3 is great. It's awesome if we're thinking aspirationally that way. But however, I'm feeling very conservative at the moment in light of our community going through recovery and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm leaning more towards option 1 because I've been banging on the water demand and the water take drum for a long time, and I would really like us to really get that sorted. But we can still, like you said, that mahi will still continue. We could still actually do that in some of the other options. I felt like that this was this paper was a workshop topic, to be quite honest, because it was really difficult for me to be able to be informed enough to pick an option unless we kind of had that whakawhiti kōrero around the table in order to be able to form a view. So yeah, I'm not opposed to, I keep coming back to the advantages, disadvantages table. So I'm not like vehemently opposed to any of them. I want, like everybody else, I really want progress in the water space. I just find myself a little bit short in regards to being able to make an informed decision. So aspirationally, I'm at that option 3. Conservatively in regards to what the community can kind of do, and also what staff are under the pump as well. You know, like, am I inadvertently setting staff up for future heavier workload? You know, so it's all of those other little things which are, I guess, sit outside of this. That I concerns about. Are you able to speak to any of those? Awesome.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. The idea with this paper was just to get an initial steer on whether it was worth exploring each of the options further, any of the options further, or whether we just stuck with option 1 for, say, the next 3 years. And then the idea being that we come up with far more information once further work's been done on if all 3 options remain on the table on each of the 3 options. There is no money in the draft long-term 3-year plan, for example, for starting work on some kind of community irrigation scheme. That would come in future long-term plans. Well, unless you add some, of course. But it's not in the budgets at the moment. But we just really need at this juncture to get a steer for whether this is something we do invest some staff time in, or whether we are sticking with option 1, sticking with our sort of mandated business as usual. And maybe we come back in 3 years' time and revisit those other options 2 and 3.
Just supplementary. So because when I looked at the recommendations, I read the recommendations as actually not and because it says or. So
you could have an and in there. You could. So they're not mutually exclusive. Put it that way. You could do all 3. You could pick and choose.
Right. Okay.
Parts of option 1 we have to do regardless.
Because what I wanted to ask was so there is the staff capacity at the moment under such a pumped team in order to be able to engage in the option 2, option 3 workout stuff.
Through you, Your Worship, what we are finding is through the conversations we're having, the initial conversations we're having in terms of water, the current water situation and looking at water allocation into the future, this question around how we manage demand and supply is coming up again and again. So in a way, it might help some of those conversations if we're already doing some work on an option 2 or an option 3. We would probably be relying on some external consultant support to manage the work, but we do have some budget currently within the strategic planning allocation to enable that to happen.
Well, in order to, because I've heard that you want to steer, I would like to see more in all three, option 1, 2, and 3. 3 aspirationally, 2 probably seems like the realistic area that would be, and yeah. So that's my steer. Thank you very much, Mr. Noble.
Thank you for that,
Thank
Foster.
you. I've been involved with the Wastewater Management Committee for 10 years, and we've had a report which just came out 21-22, and we had it again in our last meeting in November, and it depicts a radius of 8 k's from our wastewater treatment plant. I know 8 k's doesn't take into consideration all of the Poverty Bay Flats, but it certainly does take a lot. And from that, because I'm reading this report, and I've read over and over our other report from Wastewater Management Committee, and it says 77% of our crops are not typically irrigated. The current water use is between 15 to 17% of the total annual water allocated for these consents, indicating that only a minor fraction of the consented water is being used. So, water is so important, and it's so important for our future. We've got a wastewater treatment plant that's got Category C in Victorian rules of quality. Category C that comes out in Victoria is used for irrigating citrus and everything like that. We've got an incredible water supply that we have on tap. Once our wastewater treatment plant is used, that could be utilised. It could be utilised in a water park at Aotearoa with wetland and coming out for further purification. So we've got this resource that's there, and I don't see any of that being identified in this at all. So I applaud this, and I've been involved with the Managed Aquifer Recharge program right from its inception, and seeing all the different, and the buy-in of the whole community in that. There's so many different possibilities that we have, but we've got to actually realise of all the water sources that we've got. And I would suggest that we've got a water source that could be used for some irrigation right at our doorstep that we haven't even considered in this report. So I'll just leave it there. But I do support all these options. But I would like that report that we had that identified every single crop and its usage of water. I would like to see that on the whole region, actually, so we all had a good idea of what the water consumption was for each different type of crops that we have in the region, and for maybe potentially new crops that want to come here as well, because that depth of information is invaluable, and I would really recommend anyone to read that report. So on page 32 of the November Wastewater Management in the AUD category. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster.
Councillor Reid.
Ria, and then Cranston, and then Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions. I'm going to start with what I think might be the easiest one. What is the projected increase in irrigation demand based on?
So that's based on the changing weather to a large extent. So as we get more extended dry periods, then more water is needed to keep the crops growing. And I believe they also included some potential change in crop use from lower value to higher value.
Okay. Thank you. The other one was given that we know with the implementation of Te Manawa Te Wai, how hard would it be for the council to change trajectory sooner, like around resource consent applications granted? It did say our current LTP features economic growth as the #1 key value, second drinking water, third the environment, and the paragraph kind of justified the continuation of that process with a note to trying to apply more monitoring. Have we identified why? We have already identified why as a key focus in our strategic direction. Changing trajectory sooner rather than later would mean that the environment would then become the main focus. Secondary would be drinking water, and third is economic growth. And given that we know that our engagement with Te Manawa Te Wai, our freshwater planning is all heading in that direction now, can we change the trajectory sooner rather than later from an economic growth focus to an environmental focus?
So through you, Your Worship, there is already an environmental focus within the current catchment plan and planning framework. What we can't do is change those allocation targets and limits without going through a formal plan change process, which is what the current catchment planning is working towards.
was that the aquifer allocations for Makoti, like just listening to what Larry was saying, the current allocations for aquifer of Makoti, Te Hapara, and I think it was Uwawa, and there was another one that they're they're at depleting levels, they're not sustainable, and so even though it's under allocated, it does say in the report that we consider it as a council that it's actually fully allocated because the sustainability of the continued use of that aquifer is actually not viable for long-term sustainability.
Yeah, so through you, Your Worship, just to confirm, yes, and as we go through the consent renewals, we are reducing the allocation each time. So we usually issue 5-year consents for our water takes. So that gives us an opportunity at least once every 5 years to go back and reassess. And the way that the catchment plan works at the moment for Waipawa catchment is that there's a progressive kind of step down for those deep water aquifers which are over allocated. So the Makoti aquifer, so that's the process we go through.
Thank you.
Not just letting them continue.
Finally, it was around the 14 recommendations that iwi and hapu meet with council. Possibly the wording. I think it should be that council should meet with iwi and hapu, not making a recommendation that iwi and hapu need to come and meet with us. And then secondly, that it did say that council will take recommendations. Who make the recommendations? Do the council iwi taiao technicians contribute to the construction of those recommendations? And is there still room for iwi to make their own recommendations to add to the freshwater planning?
And there, which page are we on?
We're on page, it's point 14, page, oh no, it won't tell me what page it is. Page 71.
So the recommendations are taken from the report, obviously, but yes, there are opportunities to go through the catchment planning processes, but we're also developing processes where we work directly with iwi at the moment through the iwi technicians in terms of how they contribute their whakaaro, their views, their input to that. Particularly that allocation piece seems to be a very important one for iwi and tangata whenua, and we've already, I think, noted the inequitable distribution of water allocation in some parts of the region, for example.
Finally, thank you so much for the report. It was comprehensive. There was so much in it. I had to read it 3 or 4 times to make sure I didn't miss anything. Thank you, Joe. Take to you and your team.
Thank you. Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, thank you. I'm probably following on from Josh a little bit, as in a lot of the questions I've got would be workshopping questions, and I think it's related to the fact that we've done site visitors out around the area from time to time. The agricultural and horticulture sector are well aware of the need for water, and a lot of them are taking it on their own backs to put in dams to cover that. So they're putting in these dams at their expense and that. So I guess through the workshopping, you'd have to have some sort of scenario where anything we were doing was paid for by the beneficiaries and not as a rating based on a region. So, but then if the word gets out that we're going to put these in, then it disincentivises the people that are probably going to put in dams. So there's a balance there we need to work our way through to keep that private infrastructure going, which benefits them and not sort of suddenly putting these costs on council, which could be borne by the beneficiaries.
Councillor Robinson, thank you, and then Councillor Thompson.
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was having a discussion with Councillor Foster last evening, and he recommended I read that report, so I did. And I recommend all of you read it. It's really, really fascinating. It's a good piece of money, the Aquatic report. But what it said was in there that there's $725,000 in the long-term budget for seed funding. Is that funding still available, or is that now being sucked up and redistributed somewhere else?
Through you, Your Worship, do you mean in the next 3-year plan? Or
no, it's in the current LTP, the 2021-2020.
The alternative use and disposal investigation. As I understand it, that's still there, and that's what the update report was provided to the Wastewater Management Committee on the investigations. In terms of the feasibility, I suppose, of using that water for irrigation. Mr. Barry may be able to provide some more context on the constraints of using treated wastewater for irrigation.
Mostly economic, so presently that's not cost effective in practice to treat wastewater for that purpose yet. It might change in time, so I think it's really insightful to get it on the radar, but it's not presently going to come up, and when it does, it'll probably come from the private sector anyway. Because they'll stand to benefit from it rather than the public. It's certainly the case that the outstanding examples of this are in places which are arid and wealthy.
Victoria.
We're neither.
Perfect.
That's right.
Finish, Madam Chair. So, thank you, Mr. Barry. It's not consistent with the sort of stuff you read from around the show that AUND is used for high value crops, and certainly the report, the Aqualink report, does a really significant analysis and mapping. It's a really great visual report of where the high value crops lie. But what that report, in my view, misses is that it doesn't address the opportunity for development of higher value and where that might lead. I'm sure if there was more water available on the flats, we would see more high value crops. It's the fact that there is no water available to this block or that block, that you don't see kiwi fruit going in on that block and that block. It's a horse and cart argument, but I want our council in this environment to be forward thinking, and I want option 3. I want us to absolutely be the party, because if we don't do it, no one else is going to do it. The central government's not going to do it in the next 10 years. Private sector has got divested interest. They're probably not going to drive it. It is incumbent upon us. And actually, we are dumping, on average, 14 million litres a day of what's going to be Class C water into the bay. It's suitable for irrigation. We have a flat bit of whenua out here. That Aqualink report talks about the impact of irrigating 8k's radius. It's basically the entire flats. There is so much potential, and we all know a little bit about the also potential for the development of the wetland, restoration of the Modi of the Wai at the airport site, the Awapuni Moana site. But there are so many options. Now, if we don't take a lead on this, we'll be twiddling our thumbs in 3 and 6 years' time, still wondering what happened. So I want us to really own this, and option 3, please.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson and then Gregory.
Yeah, thanks for the report, Joe. Just got a question in regards to all the rain we've had. They mentioned the aquifers and groundwater on a steady decline. Has that had any effect on groundwater and the aquifers?
It will have an effect, a temporary effect, but when you look at the long-term trend, it will still be in decline.
So it's very minimal.
So it has a more of an effect on the shallow aquifers, and you can see that probably in your own backyards even in terms of the water levels, but on those deep aquifers the impact is much reduced, and
so it doesn't slowly trickle in?
Some will, but just because of the size of those aquifers and the pressure that they're under, it's not going to be enough in and of itself to reverse that long-term trend.
Second question, on option 2, it mentions the benefits. Can I develop without the cost landing on council? Is it in terms of us not doing the capital spend, or is there funding available?
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct. In option 3, that capital cost would fall to council. Option 2, we're enabling others to incur that capital cost to pursue developments of schemes.
Yeah, for me, yeah, because we haven't had a drought and we've had heaps of rain, it sort of hasn't been a focus for us. But yeah, I'm sure it will become a focus, and I think we need to be forward thinking. So I'm sitting with our current environment, we're recovery mode. 3 may not be viable. I'd like to say 3, but it's probably not viable unless there's government funding. So just because of the current environment, I'll go option 2, but in an ideal environment, I'd put at option 3 myself.
Okay, Councillor Gregory, thank you.
Thank you. When I read this, there's a lot of information in here, but I really feel that we don't have enough information in here to make such a decision. I just want to bring up a couple of things. When I stood for council in 2019, I met with an accountant who looks after horticulture businesses out on the flats to find out what was going on and what they needed. And I said, well, you know, obviously water is a problem. And he laughed and he said, why are we waiting for council to do that? We need water, businesses need to sort that out for themselves. And I find that businesses out there in places are doing that. I would really favour option 2, where we're enabling the development rather than trying to take it all on. And the other thing I want to just quickly talk about is the aquifer recharge. Before coming onto council, there was the aquifer recharge trial, which I had a lot to do with because I was working as a journalist at the paper. And it's a really deep thing, and I don't think we can just talk about how it fills up the aquifer, because you know you've got your salinity coming in, and we've done all these trials and we've got all this information. And before we made a decision, I would really hope that everyone got on board and had a good look at that trial and how it panned out, and whether or not we as a council would want to have anything to do with that.
Hey, before we move forward, and I will give you opportunity, may I suggest and test the table that we workshop this?
Yes. Yes.
I will move that it lay on the table and we workshop this. I'm going to allow you to make your comment because staff will take that into account. Is that okay, Joe? I just think it's such an important that would be worthwhile because you could hear the different insights from the table. Colin, would you like to make your comment and then we wrap it up?
Thank you. Yes, and I've been dying to comment with the
I'm glad you didn't die on my watch.
I love reading it, and I'm afraid I feel like a teacher, and I'm going to help with a few corrections. One grape should not be on there. There's no grape irrigated anywhere in this region. Waste, I take a little bit of exception to waste. Would be a farmer out there that's not running a water budget and knows the cost of running water. 50% required in the near future. I think that figure needs looking at again. We have a big asset out there. It needs more water. I should declare an interest. I've been irrigating for over 40 years, and I no longer am, but would like to get back into it. Just a brief history lesson on this. 40 years ago, there was a kiwi boom, and lots of water rights were applied for, and lots of people borrowed a huge amount of money to develop kiwi fruit and get their water rights. Iwi missed out because iwi were not borrowing at that time and were not developing at that time. So that's why we have a current inequity between the haves and have-not in water asset. Since all those farmers going broke, there's been a big corporate interest in this region. That, coupled with a subdivision change, which used to be 8 hectares, used to be a 4 hectare minimum subdivision, is now an 8 hectare. Just out of interest, 8 hectares of bare land irrigatable would be $2 million. 4 hectares of kiwi, $5 million with an income of $700,000 a year. And yet 1 hectare in flowers with water.
Point of order, Your Worship. What does this have to do with the paper?
Can you wrap it up? Because
Okay,
we do not need the history.
I'm trying not to take any longer than anyone else did.
Right.
But it could be an economic unit. At the moment, we are heading for a corporate rule of our flats because of the cost of water, and that cost is only acquirable by the corporates. Land is our biggest asset. Water plus intensification plus diversification with subdivision will equal prosperity. We need to aim for definitely 2 and aim high for 3, and don't waste your time on 1.
Thank you for your comment. I just want to give Councillor Tupara, because I'm actually breaking my own rules. Once you move, so I take back my moving lie on the table to allow people to make their last comments, and then I will move to let it lie on the table, because I see value in the contributions that Joe can get thoughts together. Tupara, and Aubrey will wrap it up for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate the suggestion that we go to workshop, and because reading the report, I couldn't make up my mind about the recommendations, and like Councillor Wharahinga, thought there was huge merit in all of them, and particularly picking up on Councillor Foster's discussion around the use of water coming from the wastewater treatment plant, because I'm also very recently part of that same committee. Yesterday I sat behind a tanker who was spraying the road to keep the dust down, and we must have held up traffic for about 2k. Huge amount of water going out. Water that could possibly be better used for other things, where a tanker filled at the treatment plant could have done the same kind of job, or probably the same money. So I think if we are going to workshop, look at options on where that huge volume of water we're putting out to the ocean might be of some use. And I can see there'll be some constraints, but in terms of recommendation point C, we should be actively looking at those sorts of things. And I'm going to just point, the mahi that staff are doing at their treatment plant is massively impressive. You know, I was knocked over, not that I know much about it, but just to acknowledge the work that they do there. In terms, big report, you kind of lose concentration. So my concentration went to all the beautiful names that are in there, that are lying at the bottom of the graph. And as an artist, I like the little slope of the flow that the names take. But there is no context for those names. And I think if we're looking at Te Mano o Te Wai, in those names are a huge amount of pūrākau that talks about water quality, water uses, impact on the mano of the whenua mano, on the pūrākau that the old people consider for our workshop.
Thank you. Last speaker, Councillor Ria.
I promise I'm going to stick to just
Good. Thank you for that.
What is just for staff to consider also, because I absolutely agree with Councillor Wharahinga that aspirationally here, but right now possibly here, and the possibility of scaffolding the options. So if we were to scaffold, say, option 1, consolidate for the next 2 years, it gives us time to keep control of the management, to set in place our freshwater requirements, to complete our TRMP, and then once those 2 things are done, which are now due in 2026, once those things are due in 2026, it actually gives more of a clear guideline as to when we start to allow the community, it gives them more of a guideline to follow in terms of the processes of manaki and tiaki that wai and utilising that wai in the right way. Because absolutely there should be storage options, but I think my immediate thinking goes to the scary back in the day dams that were built without the consideration of the communities that live downstream from them, the uses of the community further down from them. But if we are able to scaffold and have that 2 years to set in our freshwater policies and our freshwater direction with the implementation of Te Mano o Te Wai, then we're actually giving a really robust guidelines for members of the community who want to use that water for the purposes of irrigation or any other uses, that we've got a clear set of rules that must be followed in order of that use. Thank you.
And thank you for seconding, letting the report lie on the table. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you for that, and thank you for that, Joe. Very important, very interesting, and as you can see, a lot of interest. Page 83, councillors. So we're now moving to the 2 papers that were adjourned. So this is the Health and Safety Charter. Who is going to take this, Heather or James or Nadine?
You can take it as
just as read. So you can see it's really straightforward. There's a one-page attachment, so the attachment is on page 85.
If it has a minor typo in 3A.
Thank you for picking that up, Heather. Any questions or queries? It's really straightforward. Moved by Councillor Tupara and speaking.
Thank you. I can see that it is applied to physical well-being, and I'm wondering if there is an opportunity here for us to consider the cultural safety.
This is what the whole paper is about.
It's about a culture of being safe, but I'm talking about actually safe and culture.
2D.
Culture will ensure a cultural safety profile is embedded in its health and safety policies and procedures. So that was added.
Yes, I think that, and I could be completely wrong, happy to be wrong, that it's talking about we develop a culture of being health, carrying a position of health and safety.
Cultural health and safety.
Yeah, and for me, it doesn't, it's not quite explicit enough that cultural, physical, and I guess mental is very clear, those categories in the policy. And so that there can't be, or there's less opportunity to be, or one to miss out. And usually when in health and safety, the cultural bit isn't explicit enough and it doesn't get the attention it does. The other ones absolutely do. People are faced with physical harm or other difficulties, they get attended to. But the cultural safety thing tends to fall in a too difficult to identify box and gets addressed less often.
Through you, Your Worship. So this is your governance charter, and this embeds what will be put into our operational health and safety policies and procedures. I ran it past Ani, who was the one that actually suggested it in the first place, after we'd consulted internally and come up with this wording. She was satisfied that it was overarching enough for operational policy to have cultural safety in it.
Sorry, just through the chair, I think Councillor Tupara, that's the intention of the inclusion of that wording there. I guess what it'll come down to is how it's actually operationalised, which is that next step.
Okay. Any more questions or queries?
I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Wharenga, seconded by Councillor Ria. All in favour? Aye. Contrary, carried. Okay, councillors, better off funding. Remember we had a workshop on this. Thank you, Pauline.
I'm happy to move.
Can we just give Pauline 1 minute?
Boss has woken up.
Larry has had his extra coffee. Larry. As I say, this was the table to left on the table, and it was asked to workshop a little bit more so they could understand around it. So this is taking back from some of those intentions and putting it here. As it said, the original Better Off funding has mostly been used, apart from one of the projects, which was to enhance the access way of the walking and cycling, the Aotearoa project, but it was on the roads for 1.4 million. Everything else is committed, and so this, in this paper it said after that workshop, some of the funds for that 1.4 could have been used for the health and safety and the walking and cycling footpaths and things around the township. So effectively, that's what the recommendation is on this particular paper. Happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, I have Councillor Cranston, Councillor Parata.
I'm going to stand because I'm really serious.
Andy.
So I still haven't got my head around who or why this redirection is being put on us. Firstly, I want to talk about the townships. We understand the issues with the townships. We understand their importance to the region. Because of that, the townships were on a maintenance or an ongoing BAU sort of program, And into the long-term plan, we put significant funding to address the issue of the townships. We put in 500,000 a year. That has recently been risen to 750,000 a year. So already we have put millions into the townships, and going forward, we are going to put millions into the townships. That's a great thing. That's a really good thing. We should be doing that. But I don't buy into the statement that townships offers the closest alignment to the original better off Taruhera walkway cycleway specific funding. And I challenge the statement that the project is at risk of no longer enhancing the Taruhera River Shared Path project and no longer meets the better off funding. I want to quote an ex-councillor, one of my favourites from when I started, Balderdash. Tapuwai Cycle Walkways Trust. I think it's good to get your head around this trust. It's been going for several years. It started as a safety trust. Safety mainly from cycleways and that. But it's kind of morphed into developing the cycles and walkways around this region. It's a really strong trust. The membership is Lyle Evans, who's an ex-BDO partner and accountant. He's the dollars man. We have myself, which is a conduit to council. We have a really strong iwi mana whenua representation with Thelma Karaitiana and Mary Pahatu, because we recognise the importance of having that representation. We've got Ingrid Meister from Gisborne Girls High to tell what the students in the schools are thinking. We have Gillian Ward, who is passionate about cycle and walkway. We have Sheridan Gundry, who is a communications expert, because that's critical to us as well. And we have secured the expertise of Andrew Gaddam for procurement and engineering. That is a very, very strong trust with good intentions, and the intention of that trust is to get what we put in the long-term plan several years ago, what we put into the long-term plan, still sitting in the long-term plan, the Taruhera Walkway Cycleway Path. So, we have 4 teams presented the merits of their respective projects to council. What those teams lack, and what most of our projects lack, is champions. They're doing a great job within council, and that's expected of them. But projects like this need champions to drive them. The trust is the champion. The trust set itself now with a focus on the cycle walkway Taruhera to deliver it for council, to do the mahi for council, and cost the council nothing. We are not going to impose costs on the council. This funding, we were so excited when we saw that come out because it was specific. It wasn't ratepayers, and it was going to enable. It was going to enable what's in the long-term plan. Someone now wants to take it out. We fought to get it in there. Now we're going to fight to keep it. Now, what would we do with that sort of money? The next stage is what we would do. And in the old days, we used to do site visits. So all the councillors would be really familiar if they just had a walk around this area and saw the simplicity of the next stage. The simplicity of the next stage. At the moment, the cycle walkway goes to the end of Grey Street, comes to a dead end. There's a small pathway that goes past Mitre 10, which needs a bit of development to extend it. Okay? So it goes there. Then it goes along Aberdeen Road, which is probably going to have to be similar to Crawford Street as a cycleway, walkway, motorway, scooterway, mobility scooterway. And that's about 100 metres, so it's not a long section. And then it goes down Thompson Street. Now, Thompson Street suffered from the Gabrielle. There's one house down there that's red stickered. The cycleway walkway would go on the other side of the street, and having spoken to engineers and had a look at the area, if we raise the cycle and walkway up there, just half a metre or so and had it on top of that, it would offer those residents down there that are in higher at-risk properties, and one has lost their property, it would offer them massive more protection. So perhaps that could come through fossil or something like that, but it is an opportunity. That section there of Thompson Street is about 75 metres, very, very small. When you get to the end of Thompson Street, you've then got a bridge that goes over to Stout Street, which the cycleway and walkway could link up to, good linkages to town. And then there's 2 houses, and there's a concrete pathway already existing between the houses and the river, which gets you to our destination. It gets you to the botanical gardens. We saw yesterday, 88% of our community says the botanical gardens is our most used garden. It's a desired location. The playgrounds are fantastic, and it is a destination for this funding. It's not like we're on the Never Never or anything. It's actually given us an opportunity to extend our walkway, cycleway to a destination. Now, when I saw the cruise ships come in, the first thing most of those cruise liners did, there was about 40 of them getting around on bikes with their fluoro t-shirts on, because what they were going to do as the tourists, when they got to Gisborne, they were going to go for a bike ride along our fantastic pathways. So it extends that opportunity to tourism to get them to the botanical gardens. It extends that opportunity for Wainui town, anyone along the existing cycleway, to further enhance their experience and bike or walk or mobility scooter or skateboard to the botanical gardens. Now that's why we had the 1.5 million there for the Taruhera. We're going to do the work. We know the constrictions within council around dollars. We know those constrictions around staffing. The trust is going to do it for you, but we can't do it for free. Now, why do you want to take this money off us that we have got in the long-term plan? We've got the project in there. Who decided to take it out? It wasn't me.
Well, today is the decision. No,
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm
today is the
saying.
decision-making day. Yeah.
I've got the floor. I'm standing, please. Thank you.
I'm just going to stand up and say there's only one chair in this room, so please just behave accordingly. Thank you.
Right. I am demonstrating my passion, Your Worship. Now, I have been liaising with council on this, trying to get ahead of the game, because what happened was we were behind the game. We were kind of, as a trust, sitting there with an expectation these things were going to happen because they're in the long-term plan. So now we are taking the opportunity to get ahead of the game, and because of that, we have had a couple of meetings with Dave Hadfield, and we had a meeting with Michelle and that, so we're starting to get that drive, if you like, and the understanding of where we're at. But I don't want to lose this money and go way back again. Our long-term plan is our opportunity, it's our planning, it's what we use to get stuff done. We use the long-term plan. We struggle to get stuff into the long-term plan, and then we go the next steps to get the stuff done. It's in there, let's get it done. Thank you.
Councillor Karakia.
I thought about standing up, but I don't think I can. I've got feelings too about how this bit of funding should be used. There are things that we do that create transformational change, and we can't do that every day. And $170,000 is not a lot of money in the city, but it's a lot of money in small communities. And it's not that I don't think that other projects are not worth it. I do think that. But I think that we need to start thinking about equity and how much equity has made its way into townships. $500,000 per year for township upgrades every so often is just not enough, and you can tell. You can tell when you drive through these communities. You can tell when you see footpaths that are broken. You can tell when there are no footpaths. The township upgrades suggest that we want to put money into pedestrian crossings. That's a big deal. Those are big deals to communities. And I understand that there are other heaps and heaps of really good projects. But to me, township upgrades is about equity, and it's about saying that the whole region is important, not just the city. The whole region deserves a little bit of awhi, and if this money can make that happen, that's where I want to be.
Thank you. Councillor Ria next.
So I am going to stand. I'm just going to acknowledge Andy's passion by standing. And I firstly want to say, and I'm not sure if I'm in the right place to say, but
That's all right, I'll keep
me
you in line.
that there's a clear conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest when Councillor Cranston often refers to the Taruhiru Trust as we. So he is obviously a part, and from his passion, you know full well why. So I do believe that there is a possible perceived or conflict of interest in terms of that. But I admire how he passionately advocates on behalf of his group. Yes, the BAU has said, yes, we've had this money and yes, we've put it into small townships, but the report that we've just read in front of us states that the pathways are horrible and there are no cycleways, and that regular maintenance and upkeep has not happened. When it comes to putting all of these projects side by side, for me it's a matter of reach and for how many people within our wider community that it actually positively affects. And yes, the cycleways do have an impact on tourists and things like that, but we, you know, given our circumstances, giving back to the people who are here all the time, every day, all day, every year, and giving them a piece of hope, if it means that Rawania's children can walk from her house to the shop on a footpath. There's no footpath. The cycleway are added amazing additions to the inner city. Township upgrades is things that these children and these communities never had. There's no cycleways, and the walkways and the paths are in disrepair. And like Rawania said, 170k in a small community times 5 communities, and the touch and the reach that that sort of project has on those entire communities, I feel is greater than the option of the Taruhiru Cycleway.
Thank you for that. Councillor Gregory, thank you, and then Councillor.
Thank you. On November the 30th, we had a regional transport committee meeting where the Sarah Downs from Kotahi told us that the Taruhiru River and Walking single stage business case, the point of entry, it has been endorsed by Waka Kotahi. The funding's not approved, but it's now included in the 24 to 27 RLTP, which was news to me because up until that point, I'd always heard, no, we're still working on a business case. I think that's a real positive move towards that. I also love the idea of it. I understand we're going to have to wait for it, and I do see the benefits of footpaths for people, especially up in the communities, and even just the one that the council put in down Valley Road and up over Balance Street Hill is amazing difference that it makes to a community. The people that walk up there, they never could do it before. It will be the same. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Foster, thank you.
Yeah, I moved this paper. I did move this paper to start with because the recommendation has got nothing to do with giving funding to Andy's trust. All it had was a walkway, cycleway, intersection project, which we know what that is about. So, and for me, you know, that money going to the rural community is, you know, it's just a no-brainer because I know the rural communities are crying out for footpaths and crossings and some financial support to help their community survive and flourish, because there's more people moving into those communities as well. Yeah, there was nothing in this paper about a $1.4 million going to any trust. So the recommendation here was quite happy, you know, and I'm still quite happy to move the recommendations as they are.
Councillor Wharehinga, thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I 100% support these recommendations. I 100% support the $1.4 million being spent on the township upgrades project. I do want to acknowledge Councillor Cranston and the Trust for the intention to work on behalf of that cycling community. But I also want to acknowledge the township communities who actively come out and have shown a history of engaging in their own township upgrades. With alongside our tuahine Lillian up there, who's a really great māngai between the community and council. All of those different communities have actively co-constructed those things with and alongside council. So when we talk about bang for buck, there's absolutely massive bang for buck up there. Not only up the coast, but also we're talking out at Matawai. Matawai, who is a place I drive through regularly, and it has seen little love from council. So I am absolutely supportive for the township upgrades. Like Councillor Parata has said, if we could wave a magic wand and do everything, then we could. But the reality of our job is that we can't. And I think that this is the right way to distribute these funds. It's about connectivity, and it's about connectivity, right? Our communities connecting up to each other. When I think of the Taruhiru Cycleway, when I think of these township upgrades. But again, the comparison is that the town has already lots of that infrastructure. These townships have none. And it behoves us to provide it equitably across our region. Thank you very much.
Councillor Tupara, and we'll just see if someone hasn't spoken yet, otherwise the second go for Councillor Cranston.
To woe with a bit of passion, and I've raised this before in terms of our townships. We're encouraging those townships to grow. We're supporting the Toitu housing project with resource consents to building consents to go and increase those communities, and they are doing that. And they have a program to increase even more houses. But the infrastructure isn't keeping up with them. And particularly for me out at Waituhi, we've got 3 maraes. The housing stock out there is almost doubled. The amount of mokapunas running around is almost doubled, and there's not a single footpath. And the traffic management there is 100k. And it's just impossible for our kids to live safely in those communities. And that's just one example. Projects that are happening at Manatuki, absolutely no infrastructure to connect them to the shop, to connect them to the school bus, to connect them to school. And whilst we do have fantastic infrastructure in the city, and there's always room to grow, and what we've just discussed about rate increases, we need to be sharp on where we're putting our spend. And we have left those communities, abandoned those communities for far too long. If you go to Waihere, the traffic off there is 100k. You know, it's a dangerous bend, and yet we've got double the houses out there, and that which is marvellous for those marae. It's just the focus having to shift for a time. It's not to abandon projects that are happening in the city, but those projects have had much benefit over a long time, and they've created some beautiful opportunities. That opportunity needs to be spread a bit further across the Tairāwhiti. Otherwise, we need to take that name off our building and go back to the Gisborne District Council. But as the Tairāwhiti, and as I said earlier, it's where's the rāwhiti? Where does the sun get to shine in our rohe? And this decision is partway for us, bringing back a mana back to our communities, to our tangata, to our whānau, that are the stretch that completes the Tairāwhiti. Kia ora.
Thank you. Anyone that haven't spoken? Councillor Tibble, thank you.
Let's have a turn at standing up to have a speak today.
From now on, I'll set the bar high because we need to stand at every single meeting. You're going to awaken a ghost. Go, Councillor Tibble.
The main thing I want to say is that I support the recommendation as it is. The juxtaposition of the better funding of Taruhiru versus the township upgrades makes this debate as contentious as it is. The support I'd like to add to it is similar to everybody else's, but to understand that juxtaposition of Taruhiru Walk versus Cycleway versus the township upgrades as nice to have versus a basic amenity. And so I'd like to think that as we're moving into raising rates, that we would be of the consciousness to consider that putting in what should be normal basic amenity should go ahead of that which is nice to have. And that's my kōrero. Kia ora.
Councillor Alder.
I will be upstanding too.
I admire your passion, Andy, and I can't believe we're challenged at some points for your enthusiasm.
Excuse me, I stood up. Come on, Colin.
Anyway, it's a difficult call. There's money that was set aside for that reason, and I don't think I missed the meeting, but I don't remember that money being very well defended at a time, and the problem was seen in the flooding of the river and how it wasn't a good idea to have a walkway up there. And so it was quite easy to move focus because of that. So maybe that wasn't very well represented at the time. Townships, great. Don't forget Manatuki. As said, they've got a serious problem out there with a swing bridge that's been shut off, dividing the community, and you have got that amount to walk on the road bridge, State Highway Bridge, with logging trucks going past. It is a serious situation. Is this not, the other question is about swimming pools, extra funding for swimming pools. Is that part of this discussion as well?
Next paper.
It's the next paper.
It's a paper that was laid.
Right, so it's also part of the mix. I'm wondering if this isn't something that should be laid on the table for the new year, and we have another
Workshop it.
No, but it's going to be a similar issue whether we're going to spend money on town versus country.
So I think you misunderstood that, Councillor Elder. I'll just ask Nadine to clarify. So the fewer pool solar panel item, the 800,000, one of the projects that was put up there in the workshop wasn't a priority. So is your question whether that will come back? The funding, because if it's just no funding.
Sorry, I'm thinking about the next paper where there's talking about
the outdoor pools.
Yeah, the outdoor.
That's a different. That's totally different. This is demand funding.
Right, different bucket.
So when the government gave this better off funding, there were some criteria, and only certain projects were then put into that criteria. What we are now doing is looking at where it is allocated. But I just want to come back to what Councillor Cranston said earlier. Who makes that decision? Staff took that from the workshop we had. Any project can be in 1A. It is not a decision being made. Pauline took that steer from when we had a whiteboard back here and we were just giving a rough indication of where we were sitting. So that workshop brought this here. Any other comments or Councillor Thompson, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge Andy's passion also. Obviously put a lot of work into this. The wheels have been moving and it's sort of had the rug pulled out from underneath him after all this work. You've got a high calibre of people on the trust and cover all the areas. I swayed towards the townships, and after Andy's talk I sort of swayed back a bit. More so because I feel the townships get more bang for buck. Like $1 million, they get so much done, gets sucked up and not much physical works. In the city, got an issue here. 7.4 million was the initial estimation, and then it's 28 million. It's not like it's risen a mil or something. That's quite.
Remember, they took that back. That was the second tranche funding, which when the government then changed away from the waters, they took it back.
I think I'm talking in terms of the cost of the cycleway.
Oh, sorry, I misinterpret what you said. Thank you.
So I'm just wondering where those figures have come from, because that was also part of my decision. It just seems like they didn't know how much. Like it's not even close. It's 7.4 mil and 28 mil. And also, when we mentioned the cycleway intersection, there's talk of some work on an intersection. So listening to Andy, yes, it's actually the path going up is the botanical. So sort of, I think we probably needed a bit more information. It's probably because I'm a new councillor and I haven't got the history of that walkway. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was definitely for the townships. I'm probably still swayed that way, but. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. No surprises. I absolutely thought that the townships would be vended, and so be it. You know, that's our role as councillors. You know? I got to put I come in here knowing I was going to lose, but you have to put your case. That's our role. You know? I do want to challenge Aubrey though. I'm not conflicted as a trust member. My role in here is to represent the community. That trust is representing the community. There's no procuring benefit to me. There's no benefit to me. I'm trying to advance something for the community. Just like if you come in here and try to defend something for Runga Whakaata, or any of us, you come in to try to speak a case for federated farmers. It's not a conflict. It's absolutely not a conflict, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks for clarifying. Councillor Ria.
Thank you, Andy. I apologise for the and just finally, I just wanted to say that, you know, the Tarahuru Sokowai remains a part of the LTP.
Yep.
It was never conditional on specific better off funding. So it's not to say that because now it's not receiving better off funding that it isn't still a part of the LTP and it doesn't still go ahead, just not at this time.
There's still $2.5 million, and you can speak to
So
that.
in years 24, 25? 25, 26. So we've budgeted 2.5 million. That's assuming that we will get additional funding, the total being 7.3 million. So being advised that it's part of the NZTA have approved as for funding is encouraging. So it is. It's, Councillor Lea has pointed out it's part of the current plan.
Kia ora, I think we have anyone else that want to speak. I have got a mover on page 88, Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Gregory. All in favour? Aye. Contrary? Joel, record please, Councillor Cranston. Thank you for that, Terry. Councillors, what we're going to move in next is papers that we have to do annually, like you see the DLC stuff. Vincenzo, do you want to come and say something, or are you quite happy for me just to put the paper? As you can see, that is just annual reporting that they have to do and need to give feedback to. So everyone had a good read of it. It just gives the money and the work that they do. So Councillor Tibble recommends us, represents us there with ex-Councillor Pat Seymour, who's the chair. And then there are other committee members as well. Kapai?
Ask a question?
Okay, Vincenzo, come on up.
Sorry.
Thought you're going to have the easy ride. It's no.
I just wasn't sure for reading the report. Who is responsible for the deficit?
Sorry, the council.
The council.
He's paying.
Given that the council is responsible for the deficit, and it is quite a large deficit, it's about 200k. Sorry, just off the top of my head. 100k. Is there a possibility that actually, because we had, I think I remember having this conversation and also with Councillor Alpha about a year ago when it came to alcohol licensing, that the full cost and price of the purpose of licensing should be put back on those requesting license, and those deficit funds should not be picked up by the council. So I just wanted to kind of bring that back up to the forefront to see what councillors might think in regards to that, because I honestly don't think that for alcohol licensing we should be carrying a 100k deficit, because the licensing price is not covering the licensing activities that have to take place. Kia ora.
Vincenzo, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, perhaps just to give an introduction. The costs are set by the regulation, fee regulation 2013, and basically it's the legal obligation. So I believe that last year I mentioned roughly similar things. The council has two parts to go to. One is to just carry on as it is. We heard that there is the intention from the Ministry of Justice to actually increase the rates, because it becomes quite now or the other option is to operate by law and follow the same law of Wellington, City, and create a bylaw that will kind of suit situation. There are certain things like we have fee for a large event over 400 people is 572. So when you have an event of 25,000 people, they pay exactly the same fee. So maybe that is one of the big discrepancies that you know.
But Councillor Gregory, then Councillor Foster, thank you.
I just had a quick question regarding the fees paid to ALA. Is it 12, almost 30,000 a year?
Yeah, that is again is set.
So every council would pay a fee of that sort of description. It's like a real problem with ALA getting a lot of money and not being able to do their job, particularly just one case where the young guy in Gladstone Road can't get a hearing until middle of next year. So he's left the district. It's really sad. That's all.
Yeah.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I was going to raise the same thing, 115. Why has it taken ALA so long when with that particular issue, when on the 19th of May, there was a submission from the objector. It's 19th of May, we're now December, and there's still no decision being made.
So Mr. Beatty can comment to that because he was closely involved.
Just through the chair, and understand the sentiments and the frustration. However, we don't really have scope to comment on the fee that's
nothing to do with us
imposed on us, and we shouldn't really be discussing particular cases. Councillors are well aware of that situation and the decision of the district court relating to it. We're equally frustrated at an operational level in terms of perhaps some of the processes that sit in and around the process that ALA undertook in that specific case. Whether it speaks to a wider concern, I'm not sure, but I think we're well on record in terms of where we sit regarding that particular process.
Thank you for that. So just to clarify, councillors, ALA has got nothing to do with council. Nothing. ALA is a national body which our committee has nothing to do. Council have no input into their processes at all. Okay, Councillor Telfer, thank you.
I'll just make one comment on that. I totally understand that, but that situation was created by us, by council, because we allowed a school to go into the main street without consent, and that activated that whole process of that objection. So we are responsible, and we have got some, this is a person trying to start a business and operate a business in our town. So we have got a responsibility there. We can't just park it on someone else because we created that situation. And it still hasn't been resolved.
Going back to process, an appeal was lodged on the 19th of May with ALA. Doesn't matter how it got to that. They did not process that until Mr. Beatty, there was quite a bit there for that to happen, and now it's December. The process still, that happened, and our DLC made a call on the what you're mentioning now, about the school being there. That decision was made in a very timely fashion, rightly or wrongly. The process from there, where ALA became involved, then have taken until early November. Mr. Beatty, thank you.
And just through the chair, adding to that, I think the matter of standing and discussing right now would be likely the key subject associated with the appeal. But again, it's outside our scope and jurisdiction now. That'll be a matter for ALA to consider, and it sounds like it's going to be sometime next year.
Anyway, let's get back to our paper, because what we are talking about here is an annual report of a district licensing committee of the Gisborne District Council. Thank you, Councillor Wharehinga. Seconded by Councillor Parata. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you. Okay, this is something that comes across our tables every year as we welcome our RNV revellers. Is that a word? Revellers? Revellers into town. I'm hosting half of Otago University this year.
You're conflicted.
I assure you that my boy has invited all his friends. So this is something that the police ask for every year. They let us know. And for us, it's just a process in order to allow there be certain areas where alcohol is not taken. Please, let's not debate something that's going to move something there, or then move it into that alley, or you stop it there, it goes there. This is well thought out by the police, and they ask us for this support. Councillor Ria.
I would like to move the paper.
I'll second.
Yeah, I'm a a person who lives within the alcohol ban. I see that it's constantly a process that the police are refining every year, and there are different benefits every year as they refine the process of the alcohol ban. So, yeah, I support.
Seconded by Councillor Foster. Councillor Cranston, you want to speak?
Yeah, it's a question of enforcement, really. I mean, we've got alcohol bans in the city centre at the moment. As you might know, I had a haircut yesterday.
Yeah.
My hairdresser was in Treble Court, and she was telling me of the issues in Treble Court. The homeless are drinking in Treble Court. They're drinking. They have now taken a site at the end of the bridge, just by the Plunket. And as she walked to work yesterday morning, she was horrified to see a man defecating there and wiping his bum. Now that's right next to our cycle walkway. So it comes every 6 months, the homeless issue comes in front of us, and it's a problem too hard to solve. But someone's got to have another go at it, They washed their socks in Treble Court in the fountain, and then they were bashing it against the windows to try and get them dry. So that sort of behaviour, there's enforcement, so that, and it is back to the drinking side of it. They're drinking in Treble Court, they're drinking down there, and that's so. How do we enforce it? It's all very well having the rule there. The rule's there at the moment, but it's not getting enforced. They're down there drinking.
Thank you for that. I think this is very specific. I hear what you're saying. It is a tough issue, but this is very specific for those 3 days.
Yeah, I think it just needed raising because
yes,
my hairdresser told me to.
Yeah. Councillor Robinson, thank you.
I fundamentally support the application by the police, except I do note in the paper this is the first time they've asked for an alcohol ban for the 5 hours covering the Fire in the Sky event. Now, I've certainly seen a lot of families go down there, take a picnic supper, having a glass of wine while they're sitting on their blanket. The police letter does not state, it says, although police do not receive many calls for service in the area, there is still potential for people to find these areas with alcohol. It's creep, and I don't mind creep if there's rationale for it, but I can't see any rationale for banning a liquor ban for the Fire in the Sky festival. I just don't see it. There's no evidence here before me. I have no problems with anything else. It's well and truly documented. So I don't support that part of this application. So
thank you for that.
I just don't think our community, it's not a rip-roaring booze fest down at the Fire in the Sky. It's families. It's always really nice from my experience. I've been to many of them for years, and I don't think there's a need to ban alcohol for those 5 hours on that night.
Thank you. Okay, everyone has had a fair go. I have a mover and a seconder. Aubrey Ria, Larry Foster, all in favour. Aye.
Aye.
Contrary.
If you don't mind recording, please.
Yeah, against 1D, specifically 1D.
Oh my goodness, I did not put the recommendations separately, so do not ask for chances with this chair today. We passed the recommendation. People should ask for division before we vote.
Recorded, please.
Thank you. Everything is carried. Can we please have Alder, Wharehinga, Thompson? Seriously, people. No one voted against when I said all in favour. People said yes. All of you, aside from that person and that person, said no. So I'm going to put it again, and then you listen. All in favour? Aye. Aye. Contrary? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Passed. Those people want noted that they voted against the temporary alcohol ban for December 2023-2024, specifically for Fire in the Sky. Kapai? Everyone happy? Let's move on. You guys need to sharpen up with the moving and the stuff. I'm moving way past you. Come on.
Food.
It is the food that we are all missing. We're not used to a late lunch, hey Colin?
So, Madam Chair, So you counted the 7. Did you include yourself, or you voted in favour of one? So it's split.
I voted 1, 2, 3, 1,
7 all, wasn't it?
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Yeah, 7 voted yes, 6 voted no.
7 voted against 1D.
No.
Who voted against 1D?
1, 2, 3, 4,
5, 6.
Oh, Andy had his hand up.
No.
No, that's when.
Anyway, let's be moving on.
That's right, it's just the maths.
We are moving to page 142. It is council committee meetings, and I will ask Nadine to take charge of that with either.
Through your worship, so you've got a meeting schedule, a proposed meeting schedule for next year. It's not an exact cycle, having to work in holidays, statutory holidays, local government New Zealand, Zone 3 meetings, etc. It also isn't comprehensive the workshops that are required to be had for the long-term plan. I think also we've got Sustainable Tainawhiti. There are 4 meetings. There's likely to be more as we move into the TRMP review process. So this is base for what we've got. There are going to be more meetings, I can guarantee that.
Thank you. Councillor Cranston and then Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I won't stand up just in case I start whack-a-mole.
And well.
Yeah, I spoke before, but you know, just the differences in the time that I've been on council. When I started, we had more committees, and we met more frequently. We were monthly, and then as time got on, staff needed more time, or it was seen as practical to give staff more time than to be writing reports all the time. So we stretched it out to 6 weekly, and that was my understanding of where we got to. When I go through the schedule at the moment, and I've heard what you say that there will be changes, but where those changes won't be to the committees or the council, when I look at council, it just doesn't make sense on our commitment to meeting 6 weekly. The pattern is frequency of meetings, the council, 6, 7, 15, 6, 10, 4, 4. The pattern for our ops committees, there's 12, 8, 7, 8, 6, 8, and more than 12. So those frequencies are well outside the six weekly commitment. And so I went on to other council websites to look at their calendars. And the commitment on virtually every other calendar I went to was six weekly, and quite strictly 6 weekly.
Council meeting missing after the April.
There
2
must
weeks
be.
after the April one, there's a council meeting missing, Councillor Cranston. It should be the end of April, maybe the 2nd of May it should be. If you take a look, it should be on a Thursday.
So that's not my fault.
Because you can see that one is out of.
Is it though?
Because they go in.
So what was it, 7th of May?
No, the 2nd of May.
Sorry, through your worship, there should be one between April and May, following the March one.
Yeah, so the gap is 14th of March to the 27th of June.
2nd of May.
So that crunches it.
So basically this meeting structure was what you had last year, without all the extraordinary meetings and without the meetings that were cancelled.
Quite different.
That is totally out of date with respect, Councillor Cranston, in ours, because that was never updated for you. We had a lot of changes to our meetings.
We had a lot more workshops.
But can I just say that I started working for council in 2012. The monthly meeting schedule, we had lots of meetings that were cancelled because they had no business. So when we moved to a 6 weekly cycle, it's not exactly 6 weeks because we also have school holidays. We have counsellors with young children. So we've accommodated a lot of things so that everyone has the time to spend with their whānau, and also that staff can have a bit of a break after big pieces of work if they choose to do so. So that's basically the rationale. It's pretty similar to what we've been working on for the last 3 years, definitely.
Thank you.
Well, it still doesn't explain the variation from 6 weeks. I mean, councillors with young children, is that our consideration? Is it that we have to set our calendar because we've got to consider councillors' needs? Or are we doing the most work the best way possible for our, who pays our wages, which is the ratepayers, and their expectation of us to do a certain amount of work? The other concern I've got is this calendar needs to go down to Wellington. And Wellington's going to look at that calendar and go, whoa, this is supposedly...
Is this going to Wellington? Who's this
You
going?
said this morning that...
No, I said this is the bare basics which Heather need to report on to show when you meet.
Yeah.
This is when I said then the local government New Zealand stuff come in, Zone 3 come in, all the workshops come in. So this is the bare bones, which Heather then will fill in as we go. So this is to show that you are requiring with your statutory requirements that your governance plan require from you.
Yeah. The issue of cancelled meetings, that's correct, it was. But my feeling on that is you're better off to have a meeting and cancel it than not to have it scheduled. I think it's a better way to go because it gives us the opportunity to address things at that date. And if there's nothing to be addressed, sure, cancel.
No hearings in here as well.
Yeah, we don't do any of those anymore.
Councillor Tibble.
I just want to lodge an objection to the Councillor Cranston's corridor about mothers needing to take care of their children, especially in light of the fact that the actual role of councillors is to take care of all the needs of all members of the community. Just want to note my objection to that.
Councillor Robinson, I cannot miss you with the shirt.
I just want to again note in this forum that I would prefer as many matters that are addressed in workshops to be addressed in a way or a forum which is more publicly reported and is open for attendance by the public and scrutiny by the public. Certainly I learn so much in the workshops, and I hear things that I think, well, crikey, Dick, if the public heard that, they would be so more well informed. And yes, we might ask stupid questions or look like dicks sometimes in the workshops, but that's a small price to pay for transparency of democracy. And we know the Ombudsman has an issue with this, is investigating it. We know that across the nation, our councils are being criticised for having way too many workshops because they're not publicly scrutinised. So I would encourage as many matters as possible to be please done through a forum other than a workshop, if it can be done, please.
Thank you. Mrs. Condi, you want to comment on the work that you've done in that space?
So yesterday I attended a webinar run by Simpson Grayson for Taituara on workshops, and the consensus was that the Ombudsman actually never made a recommendation using Section 22 of his Act. So he's kind of just put it out there. And when we were listening to what the recommendations from Simpson Grayson were in terms of our process here at council, we've got a pretty good process of workshops and then that information becoming public and decision making fora. The other opportunity we may have, and we're bringing a paper to you to review this early next year to review workshops, is that we have in the past invited public to our workshops if they have a vested interest. I can remember 2015 we invited Federated Farmers when we were doing revenue and financing policy, for example. So the other opportunity that we have is by scheduling our workshops, we can also include them in our governance work plan, which means that they're public. The people know what's going on, but we also have the opportunity to apply Lagoima to those when there is a reason for excluding the public. An example of that would have been the development of the future development strategy, because you don't want people land banking, essentially. So, like I said, we'll bring the table back to you. I feel as the democracy manager that we do a really good job. We got a legoima from the Gisborne Herald on our 18 workshops that we had to date. We only needed to release one workshop because everything else that was discussed at those workshops was now in the public forum by way of reports, and you made the decisions.
Just secondary to my point, it shows, for me, it shows the public how robust our debating processes are and just how deep a dive we do. And later on when we cop it for our decision making, it's really, I think, important that the community knows, actually, we really chewed this over, we really went deep on it, and we did it at a workshop, but you'll never know about it. So I still really want us to make them public.
Thank you. Okay, any more? Yes, so I'll get Nadine to respond because she's feverishly made calculations here. So there's a lot of work coming out of this little office next to me. Councillor Alder, thank you.
I'd like to agree with Andy. More meetings, smaller reports from council staff, less consultant input, smaller agendas, more council-only get-togethers where we can discuss stuff off the record.
You just said public, you want most things public, and then you say council only time to consult, talk in private.
Workshops, less structured and public, and then have PX-only workshops.
Thank you for that. Anyone else wants to speak to the calendar, which is just a basic one and will be fleshed out significantly, and then everyone's going to complain to me how often they need to be here for so much work. Councillor Parata.
I actually appreciate Councillor Cranston's perspective about wanting to work, like we were elected to work, to come to this table and to participate. I personally don't have an issue with the skeleton as it is, knowing how many extraordinary councils we had, how many times we've been called to this table. I feel I was worked this year, and that's what I asked for. That is what I asked for. But for the structure that we have here, let's not get it twisted. That's going to be twice as many meetings next year, so I don't have a problem with that. But be mindful that when we schedule the bare bones to be twice as many, that's twice as many times I've got to come 200 kilometres into town and home. It's not that I don't want to do it, I will do it. I'll do it as many times as I can. What I'm suggesting is that for a start, this is a good start, knowing that we all come to the table as we need to. And also appreciate that Democracy Services considers how life affects people. You come to this table with your best when you're set up to succeed, and that might be health-wise, it might be family, it might be your mahi, but when you come to this table, if you've got all of the things you need to be super successful at it, you're going to contribute way more. It's going to be more valuable. And so appreciate that, mahi. Thank you very much, Democracy Services. Ngā mihi nui.
Thank you. Councillor Wharehinga Thompson-Ria.
I do agree with Councillor Cranston in regards to that missing council hui that we're hearing is around about the 2nd of May, so that's awesome. I was wondering too that past this, I've no issue with this bare bones, but Councillor Parata brought up a really good point in regards to the extraordinary council meetings we have. I'm wondering if also past this, possibly via Democracy Services, we get some placeholder meeting invites and things like that, because as people who are active, well, for myself who's active out in the community, sometimes I'll make commitments to different people in our region, and then I have to start shifting those commitments around in order to meet what I consider my first duty as being the councillor. So maybe just as a possibility to have calendars.
Or you follow what we've always suggested is that you keep Wednesdays and Thursdays as free as you possibly can.
That's what I've
had meetings on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Yeah, but those were maybe 2 or 3 this year, and that would have been that Wednesday or Thursday of that year was when Zone 3 or when there were meetings Wellington. So we do try, councillors. Wednesdays and Thursdays are the days where we will 95% of the time aim to have workshops in, and try at the odd time we will give as much notice as possible. And also, like I said earlier, we do have the Zoom Teams option. I prefer people come in person when you can, and use that when you are sick or you have sick children at home, or you maybe, sometimes I'm in Wellington for us, but then I can still Zoom in. So I want councillors to be smart with that tool too, but that is now a tool in our kitty where you will count as the quorum as well. So that's something to add.
I don't know if I've completely convinced, because if the community saying, hey, we want to have a cordial with you about this, I can meet you on Wednesday, I'm not going to say no to them, because we might have it.
Then you need to prioritise.
So we'll finish every time. But there's other things we don't finish every time at 3. But it's just to help. It's just an idea to help us with our prioritising of our and working with our council calendar.
And to me, just a last comment, extraordinary council meetings have that special name because we need to pull them out of the hat. So it's very difficult to say we plonk the odd one in there as a placeholder, because those are stuff like 1st of November when we had our fossil stuff. Okay, the fire is on, there's fire next to me, so I'm going to hand over to Nadine.
I think I was just trying to work out, so what practical calendar year are you working with, and then work our way back from there. And really, so you should have about 7 meetings for each of those 4 committees. So council, finance and performance operations. So we've got 7 in council, we're going to add that 1 more, which will make 8. You've got your finance and performance and operations, so we will need to, if you want that regularity of meetings, we'll look at adding it 1 more. You will get 1 more, like my words, when it comes to finance and performance in terms of that workshop. And even today, you've asked for another workshop on water demand management, so that will be happening here in that space. So, then it is a bit of an art in terms of juggling all the various commitments that are here, including the statutory holidays and including all the zone 3s and regional sector and all that.
Rural and provincial still needs to go on, the regional sector needs to go on.
Yeah. So, but what I think what we need to do is in January, if we can get something together, we've got a whole team that's sitting there, that in their heads they've got workshops that they want to have with you, that needs to be put on this paper so that you can get a comprehensive overview early in the year, so we're not rushing around and throwing things in at the...
Yes. So at our January, or then hopefully at the January meeting, Heather, we would have a rough, and I ask councillors also, there will be a rough indication in there. Things might swap, and Heather is great with updating our digital calendars. If you have an issue with that, please go for a little training in that, because once it works really well, because then if Heather needs to change the starting time from 3 to 3:45, she can send out an email, and automatically when you accept it in your diary, it then changed to 3:45. It's well worth getting your digital calendar set up. It makes a massive difference to Heather, because she knows then all 25 people that need to be at that committee got the same invite. And also just be mindful, sometimes there are glitches and things that need to be moved. But Heather, I do want to acknowledge you as well, trying to juggle, running this table is like juggling snakes, so I also want to acknowledge you on behalf of councillors for the democracy manager work that you do. Okay, so adopts the meeting schedule until the end of 2024. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Wharehinga. We look forward to everything else included. Heather, all in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, the next report was just added as a FYI, so you can see what the regional sector are talking to ministers to, and you can see a lot of that align with what we do but we just wanted to add that in there. Did you wanted to talk to that, or is it just an FYI?
No, it is just an FYI.
Yep. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Ria. All in favour? Aye. Carry. So we've got a late paper, councillors, this one, which is draft capital investment program. So that was emailed out by Heather 3 or 4 days ago. Pauline and Nadine, I'm going to hand over to you.
So this is just basically the details behind some of the capital expenditure that we have to, and we saw before with the summary of the infrastructure, most of the capital was 95% was infrastructure or category 3 buyouts and those kind of things. And what was identified that there were two items, and I think it was a little bit of a misconception with regards to the pool being an optional part of that that we're getting here. As part of the deal that we had with Kiwi Pools, we were supposed to have completed the outdoor pool as well, but we didn't have enough money. And so the money was reconfigured and said that of that 46 million, we'll give you 40 million for the indoor pool, but you have to have a commitment to finish off that outdoor pool like you said you were going to do by 2028. But they said you can get additional funding, and we're seeking obviously 50% of that from elsewhere. So the pool itself, that outdoor, is something that is contingent on us doing that first part of the pool. So it is in there just to make sure that you understand that. The only other one that we have got in there was a bit of renewals for the CBD. The CBD started their renewal program, which was in 2020, 25 years later. We're asking to say that some of that renewals that was completed in there needs updating. So they're the two main differences. Happy to take any question with regards to the actual projects that are in there.
I want to ask, so you will see on your attachment that that's in red, what Pauline just, and I might have missed that, but I also see in red the land stability projects.
Yes. So essentially, that's a bit of the recovery of, it's probably just a picking this meaning that some of the things up at Tittering,
oh yeah, yes,
all in the park, they actually need to re-establish the tracks and things that are around as after Gabrielle. There's a fair bit of catching up on our reserve and tracks areas that have fallen into the away.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Telford, thank you.
Yeah, Pauline, just on page 9, it's not a question, I just want to make a comment. In the current environment, we're looking at massive costs and never enough money, and everybody in the public is facing high interest rates and mortgages that they're having to service, and they're having to cut their cloth. And when I look through on page 9 through all our different divisions, the level of service would, there's no decrease there, and everything is either maintained or increased. But to be able to cut our cloth, we are going to have to make some decisions somewhere where there's going to be a decrease in service, and what I mean by a decrease in service, that's then going to decrease the budget. And cutting anybody's cloth, you actually have to miss out on something. So I'm just, it's not a question. It's just if you just read it that way, there's nothing there that's telling me that we're cutting our cloth to actually live within our means.
I'll just give a clarification, because you're quite right. If you read it, if you see that, that's what you're looking at. Unfortunately, the increase, maintain, or growth is actually defined by legislation. And what happens is we have what's called funding impact statements, and you're defined, they have to say what are you maintaining, what are the renewals, if you like, on the basis. And some of the things which regards to so-called growth or something, there may be, and if the diameter of a pipe, and I'm not an engineer, but if the diameter of the pipe is slightly increased because it needs to service some more at the end of it, there's a part of that, percentage of that is considered growth. It's just basically the infrastructure, but you have to define what was maintaining it before but was slightly grown. So in here, what is inherent is the roading isn't actually an increase or a maintain. It's actually taking a while before we get to being maintained. It has decreased. It's going to be 4 or 5 years to whatever that we have to get back to where we need to be. So that's inherent in this kind of the conversation. It has decreased, and now we're trying to get it back into the reinstatement. But they are defined solely on, legislative words and what they are.
It's entirely within the council's prerogative to say, actually, we don't think you should increase or maintain, we think you should actually decrease services, and therefore I would say, well, what are those services that you want us to decrease? And then we would say, and these would be the implications of doing so.
So just to summarise, your teams and your directors and yourself would have gone through every piece of work you do, decide what needs to be added or what's missing, so this is where you can see the added stuff, and then see if it can fit into the budget. Is that correct? So each area, it's like line by line, checking what needs to be done. What do we rate people for? What is the level of service that we rate them for? And then obviously there are a few new things which directors would have gone and see that's missing from the program and add that in. I have Councillor Robinson, and then Cranston, thank you.
So, thanks for the paper. Can you just, I raised it 2 days ago. I don't understand what the CBD revitalisation is about. I don't understand what the rationale is. I don't understand what the cost-benefit analysis is. It's $2.5 million in an environment where we're trying to save money.
So as mentioned before, 2000, it's renewals. Basically, renewals. Basically, what first occurred in 1999, it's
24 years ago, I don't know what occurred in 2000, so just tell me what's...
$3.5 million worth of expenditure that occurred in the CBD. So it's our assets, it's not...
Clara.
So it's on the footpaths, your cobblestones?
Yeah, that's right. So the CBD revitalisation...
The trees, all of those kind of things. So basically, it's updating, the paths and things that is around in that area.
So we're going to spend $2.5 million updating the footpaths, the tiles? Trees?
Look nice.
Planters?
Signs.
And leveraging, as you say, it would be looking at how else we can get for external to actually do even more.
So we'll be leveraging more money from partners also to...
If you have your part of share in it, how do you get more if you're actually putting some of it in there?
Hand on heart, not overly inspired by that vision.
Right, thank you.
No, but seriously, this $2.5 million,
right.
We have palm trees, we have box planters that are really beautiful, we have whipsy-daisy tile floor, but if we're going to revitalise our CBD, which we've spoken about many times in this room as needing an injection of life, I'm sorry, to me, that's not going to do what we hope to do to our CBD and our businesses, etc., etc. And I would love this to be parked a bit until we analyse what happens with the Wakakotahi trial on Grey Street, the pedestrian zone, and just come back with a bit more vision and calibre and just substance, and then look at it. That's my thought.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any more discussion? Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, I know we discussed this on Tuesday. Are we going to have a GHL give us a really good explanation of what they're doing in the community housing? Like I said on Tuesday, they did those places up, they got them to a very high standard, and now in the budget we've got 676,000, which is 6,500 per property. Still, every year we seem to have this huge bill for community housing. You get your house up to a certain standard, and then you shouldn't have to be chucking money at it every year, and especially not another. We've put heat pumps in them, we've carpeted them, we've painted them, and they're looking really, really good. So why have we got 676,000 in the budget?
We can come back with an asset management plan to see what that is and what's the needs of it, and have more details. But I'll just say, again, that they are, most of them 1969, 1989, and there are some significant amount of
No, you missed the point. They've been working on this maintenance and renewals program for ages, on those old places.
Yeah.
Those old places have now got new carpet. Those old places have now got new heat pumps. Those old places have been painted. I know they're old. We're not going to make them any newer, but we've got them to a standard which you don't have to keep every year in such huge amount of money into.
We'll bring back the asset management plans and see what they are. It's the easiest way of doing it.
Councillor Alder, thank
Thank you,
you.
Your Worship. I'm in agreement with Tony Robinson, unusually.
Take that back.
Yeah, this is becoming late, and I think we should just leave it for a while. There's some stuff here I don't agree with, and some stuff I want more information, i.e. 14E, utilising existing contractors on major local projects. Question mark, does that include some of the heroes like Uru, Cranswick, and the Waiheke thing? There's a lot more in here than looks, so I'm leaving it on the table.
A real problem with the strong desire lately to leave things on the table.
Absolutely.
We're here to do a job.
Yep.
We're here to make decisions. We're not here to leave stuff lying on the table. If you need stuff, get it before you get here.
Councillor Parata.
I just want to get...
Councillor Parata. No, he's finished.
I just wanted to get clear that this is kind of the budget, like what we're allocating money to, right? So the details around the stuff, the things that we want to do will come later. So if in principle we agree with the outline of this budget, then I agree. Is that right?
So some of this is your draft budget that you're going to go out and consult with. So if there are things that you say, hey, we wanted more of, or we wanted less of, this is your part.
I see.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't. Numbers are not really my strong point, but the impact to the people is, and that's how I can tell whether or not it's a good decision to make, I suppose. I can't really get numbers to tell me that story. And just in principle, I absolutely agree that the CBD needs love and attention and energy. What that vision is, I'm sure we'll find it together, but the budget seems fair, and all the hopes and aspirations we have for our people, that's all I was saying now. I don't have any feedback other than that.
I'm going to take a speaking turn. In this year, in the last 6 months, after people got over the initial cyclone shock, if I did a request for service tally in my office, which I don't, complaints, feedback, unhappiness with the CBD would probably top that. So I personally like the fact that it is in there and that it is earmarked, and then we will go, because this is also a partnership project. I know that Trust Aotearoa has also done some work in there, and when the time is right, we will be more involved. So just personally from my office, that is something that was raised several times, and I would say by more than 50 people, which is quite a chunk of people that would have raised this in the last while. I also know that when we look at our levels of service, like say this CBD, I'm just going to use that as an example again, lots of people will say we're not maintaining the service that we should. So then that's where the increase come in there. And each director is responsible for their area to see what we rate people for as the service they get. So overall, high level, I'm happy with what I'm seeing today. We will have more input going forward because we will be looking at more detail later.
This is probably a lot of the capital. This is the detail behind that. There are the opportunities that you have is for consultation. And if people say we want to do more of this or we want to do less of that, then you have a chance at that point to say we want to put this in, we want to take that out.
So this is a first bite at it?
Yes. Yes.
Papai. Councillor Wharehi.
I'm going to move this because it's a draft program to be included in the draft 3-year plan going up for consultation.
This is a first bite.
I'm happy for this to be the draft figures.
I'll second that.
Move and say draft.
And the recommendation approves the draft capital and like we said, this is the first bite. So there's a mover, Councillor Wharehinga, seconded Councillor Stoltz. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. This brings us to the end of our public meeting. I want to thank everyone that contributed today. I do want to take the opportunity to thank Winsley, who would be watching us online. Winsley, thank you, mate. We're going to give you a little clap. Thank you for always sitting through our meetings and reporting on behalf of the Gisborne District Council. I also want to acknowledge Matthew Rosenberg, who has now moved on. Thank you, and a Merry Christmas to everyone at the Gisborne Herald and people that might be watching online.